Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is wonderful to see such a large crowd here tonight. Rowdy crowd tonight, too. Thank you all for joining us. We do appreciate you being here for the February 22nd, 2021 Alpharetta City Council meeting. I'll note for the record that all members of City Council are present and accounted for at this time. And if you will, if you're able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. And this evening we have the distinct honor of presenting a proclamation by the Mayor and City Council of the City of Alpharetta for Ms. Dorothy Norwood. So if Ms. Norwood and her family and supporters could please join me up at the front, I would appreciate that very much. Thanks, sir. Ms. Norwood, if you don't mind, I would love it if you would face this crowd and show them your beautiful face. I am not going to tell you how to live your life at this point. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the distinct honor of recognizing Ms. Norwood here this evening. I did not realize that she was a resident of the city of Alpharetta until Mr. Andrews had pointed that out to me. And so thanks to him bringing that to my attention, the City Council of Alpharetta is now presenting this proclamation on her behalf. And Mr. Andrews, would you like to talk a little bit about Ms. Norwood's achievements?
Well, good evening. Ms. Norwood is what we consider a living legend. That's all you could say. She's been a trailblazer for gospel music for many years. If you're familiar with Reverend James Cleveland, the Caravans, the proclamation will tell you everything you would need to know. I don't want to let the secret out the bag. But one thing about her is, and the greatest thing about it, she's a child of God. And I think that in gospel music, as a witness of spreading love, I think that's what we're doing here today, spreading love and acknowledging one of our own. Amen? Amen. Amen.
Would any of y'all like to say a word or two? You're not shy, I know.
Not at all. Good evening, everyone. We're just honored to be here tonight sharing with our beloved Evangelist Dorothy Norwood, who is a legend, who's sung with over 50 years. She actually has 53 CDs and getting ready to release her next CD on next month. She's also open for the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger handpicked her to go on their opening tour. So she's been around and she's a phenomenal vocalist. If you don't know who Dorothy Norwood is, just Google her, Dorothy Norwood Ministries, and she's an amazing vocalist. And thank you all so much, Mayor. Thank you so much, Gene Andrews, for thinking enough of us. Amen.
Now I'm going to read this first, but you're going to get your opportunity to sail off your pipes, okay? Sure. Okay. So here in front of all of you, I am reading this proclamation by the Mayor and City Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, for Evangelist Dorothy Norwood. Whereas Evangelist Dorothy Norwood has recorded 53 albums to date, 5 of which were certified gold. She has received numerous awards and accolades, including 6 Grammy nominations. She has also been acknowledged by the Dove Awards, Stellar Awards, Lady of Soul, Soul Train Award, and the prestigious Ambassador Dr. Bobby Jones Legends Awards at the Grand Ole Opry House in Nashville, Tennessee. And whereas Evangelist Dorothy Norwood is a native of Atlanta, Georgia, she began singing with her family at the age of 8. In 1956, she moved to Chicago, Illinois, and officially began her professional career with such notables as the great Mahalia Jackson, the world-renowned gospel caravans, and the incomparable Reverend James Cleveland. And whereas evangelist Dorothy Norwood launched her solo career in 1964, I was born that year, and recorded her first album, Johnny and Jesus. It brought her national attention and was certified gold. She followed up with the stirring Denied Mother, which also went gold and earned her the title World's Greatest Storyteller. And whereas evangelist Dorothy Norwood was invited by Mick Jagger to join him and the Rolling Stones on a national 30-city tour. This gave her the opportunity to spread the gospel in the secular community, which was virtually closed to gospel artists. She has traveled the world over, including Germany, France, Sweden, Denmark, Holland, and England. And whereas evangelist Dorothy Norwood has been inducted into the International Gospel Music Hall of Fame and the American Quartet Hall of Fame. Also, to her credit, amongst the 5 gold certified albums, she has had 3 top 10 gospel albums and certified by Billboard magazine in the top 40 14 times. And whereas evangelist Dorothy Norwood, for decades, has blessed millions by her classic, Victory Is Mine, arguably one of the greatest congregational hymns of all time, which still appears in national commercials and Hollywood feature films such as The Help, which garnered a Golden Globe and Oscar nomination. And whereas evangelist Dorothy Norwood released her 52nd album, An Incredible Journey, in 2014, noted at her best yet, featuring When the Church Begins to Pray. Her 53rd recording, The Journey Continues, will be released February 2021. And evangelist Dorothy Norwood stays busy, but never too busy to give back. She has established Dorothy Norwood Music Group and the Dorothy Norwood Scholarship Fund. She uses both platforms to assist the next generation of young gospel artists, educating them on the business of music and assisting them financially to attend the college of their choice, furthering their musical gifts. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and the city council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, do hereby thank evangelist Dorothy Norwood for her tireless support of Alpharetta and service to the community, and wish her much success in her continued role as a national recording artist. Proclaimed this 22nd day of February, 2021.
Thank you very much, the mayor. And I'd just like to say that, you know, every time I hear my bio and all I've done, I said to myself, did I do all of that? Truly, God has been good to me. I have been on the journey. I have lived on this earth for 85 years. And I tell you, I'm not tired yet. And you all pray for me, and I pray for you, and thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're definitely.
I knew something was up when I saw my wife at a city council meeting.
get anything over on the mayor. But I would ask Marion to come on up. And Amber, is Ryder here? Can't see. Come on up. Anybody else representing the Y in the room? We'd love to have you up here as well. I'm pretty sure the mayor's figured it out by now. Well, thank you guys for coming out. Mr. Mayor, you're pretty good at dishing these things out. Let's see how you are at receiving one. Because on this day, I would like to thank YMCA and the city of Alpharetta for coming together. We had a need on the east side of Alpharetta from a park standpoint and from a facility standpoint. We looked at so many options over the years, even back when you were on council. We were looking at raw land, trying to figure out the best way to do it. And fortunately, Mayor Gilden's on the board of directors at the Isaacson Family Alpharetta YMCA, and got the conversation going. They even been with Scott Dahl and some others as it came along, and then Ryder here towards the tail end and finished it up. And big appreciation that we were able to put a partnership together, apply $2.5 million from our bond, which was designed to be used for exactly that. But you facilitated the conversation and you took it a step further. A lot of people start them. It takes a lot to finish it. And when you finish it, we get what we have now, which is an amazing facility over at the Alpharetta YMCA. And I couldn't be more proud of you and what you put together with this whole team. So with that, the Metro YMCA nominated and approved. Ryder had something to do with it. Jimmy is the Volunteer of the Year for the Ed Isaacson Family Alpharetta YMCA for the year of 2020. So it wasn't all a bad year. We got some things done. And I really appreciate that. And I'm going to ask you guys to say a few words on it, and then we'll move forward, Ryder. Well, we know the only reason it got done was because Amber kept his schedule straight. No, I think he could have pulled it off. It wouldn't have been as smooth, but I definitely want to send this down the line. Everybody say a few words. Come on, you do it.
Hi. I'm much more behind the scenes than in front of the scenes, so I'm nerve-wracked right now. But I definitely have to say that the mayor and I have had conversations about how difficult the last year has been. In fact, we kind of have a running joke about it. But, you know, there have been accomplishments all along the way. Several of those he mentioned during the State of the City address. But he's never, ever going to turn and put the spotlight on himself at all. And so this is our very, rare opportunity to do that. And so we, of course, heard about the Volunteer of the Year and how he was nominated. And Dan ran with it and said, we're taking this home. So we want to make sure that you get the credit that you're due for all that you do for the city, and what you do for the community matters so much.
So I've been with the Alpharetta Y now for about a year, or actually a year and about a month exactly. And over the last year, obviously it's a very interesting year to start at the Y here in Alpharetta, but to watch what Jim was able to do kind of through this pandemic, not only on the Y side, but the community side, was just amazing. It was like a shoe-in for who the person had to be from a volunteer standpoint. To watch what Jim did alongside the Y and opening the doors, literally opening the doors to our virtual programming that we did, opening up spaces that weren't our spaces to be able to provide these spaces for our kids. That's only the tip of the iceberg of what Jim has done to set us up for success, not only with the Y, but garnering the partnerships that we have with the city. Thank you, Jim, for everything you do.
So, man, it used to be a man of few words, but he's changed over the last year. I'm going to turn this one over.
This will be brief. We need to get started on the meeting. But I do want to say that I'm honored, I'm humbled. I also feel like I really didn't do anything. And I say that because when I got on council and Mayor David Lau appointed me as liaison to the Alpharetta Y, I started attending your board meetings. And while my family had participated, we'd grown up, our kids at the camps and the programs and things like that, I'd never had the inside view of everything the YMCA does for this community. And once I did, I gained a tremendous appreciation for the team at the YMCA. And for the last 8 years, I've been blessed as a city councilman and now as mayor to be able to be surrounded by amazing people. here in the city of Alpharetta and at the YMCA both. And in this really difficult year, to have those people around me to do the things that y'all did has been amazing. And I appreciate the award, I truly do. But it's more a recognition of what the Alpharetta YMCA staff and board and supporters did in cooperation with our city council and our staff, that were able to open up facilities and go from having no idea that schools weren't going to open in a week. And I remember sitting on a call with our Parks and Recreation Programming Director and talking about, well, Fulton County just announced they're not opening schools next week. What can we do to help these families of essential workers, of the kids that need some way to be able to learn? And on less than a week and a half, they put together something to make it happen with the support of our council and the community and the YMCA in general. So thank you, I appreciate it. But man, it's just good to be surrounded by great people.
Mary Ann, a word? Okay. All right, we'll leave it at that. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to show my age a little bit.
Not as easy as it looks.
No,
is
it's
it?
not. Definitely can't do that. There we go. Proclamation of the Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia. Jim Gilbin, Volunteer of the Year. Whereas Jim Gilbin was named the Ed Isaacson Alpharetta Family YMCA Volunteer of the Year for 2020. He's been a volunteer at the Alpharetta YMCA since 2012 and serves on the advisory board. And whereas Jim Gilbin was instrumental in establishing a partnership between the YMCA and the City of Alpharetta in the construction and operation of the Preston Ridge Community Center on the YMCA campus. This center serves as a joint hub of activities and programs for the entire Alpharetta community. And whereas Jim Gilbin has been an active citizen of Alpharetta for over 2 decades and currently serves as mayor of Alpharetta. During his time as an Alpharetta council member, he was liaison to the city's parks, recreation and cultural services department, followed by 2 years as liaison to the public safety department. And whereas Jim Gilson also serves on boards of the Alpharetta Public Safety Foundation, Alpharetta Convention and Visitors Bureau, Wellstar North Fulton Regional Hospital, and Mount Pisgah Christian Schools. Now therefore, we, the City of Alpharetta, the City Council of the City of Alpharetta, do hereby thank Mayor Jim Gilbin for his tireless support of Alpharetta and service to our community, and wish him continued success. It's my honor to present this.
All right, squeeze in.
Yeah, you know what you're doing. Come on, you're right. Just smile. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Thank you, Mary.
Whew, when I saw my wife here, I was really worried. So now we'll move on to the agenda for this evening, and it starts off with the consent agenda. And the consent agenda consists of the council meeting minutes from February 15th, 2021, alcoholic beverage license application PH-21-AB-06, Diner BC LLC, DBA Vas Cocina, 58 Canton Street, Alpharetta, Georgia 30009. Is there anyone on council that would like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, second by Councilman Merkel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So we'll move on to the public hearing portion of tonight's agenda, and we have one item under public hearing. That item is CLUP 21-01/Z-21-02, V-21-03, the 1858 residential subdivision. Mr. Woodman, I believe you have the floor on this one.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The first item before you is a comprehensive land use plan amendment, rezoning and variances to allow 11 single-family detached homes on 1.68 acres in the downtown. Have the location map on the overhead. The subject properties are located at 0, 73, 89, and 109 Cummings Street. It's on the south side of Cummings Street, just to the, across from Manning Drive, just to the east, west of Cricket Lane. Here are some street view moving from the east to west. So this is at Cricket Lane looking at the property. This is a view of the property from Cummings Street, moving closer to the Alpharetta First United Methodist Church. This is a view of the property from Manning Drive, so looking south. And this is a property looking east from the rear entrance to the Alpharetta First United Methodist Church. The applicant is requesting a comprehensive land use plan amendment from public institution education to downtown residential density. You can see a portion of the property already has that future land use, so they're asking that for the remainder of the property. The applicant is also requesting a rezoning of the property. The property is currently zoned, there's a small portion that's zoned to O&I with the remainder R15. Applicant is requesting a rezoning to DTR, downtown residential. There are also variances requested to allow a private alley to count towards meeting the minimum lot size. There's a request to reduce side setbacks and to allow a stream buffer encroachment. With respect to the variances, I just go in a little bit more detail to each one of those. The first variance request is to the definition of a lot. The definition of a lot requires that a lot minimum lot size not be met counting streets or alleys. The applicant has submitted a site plan that shows an alley at the serving the detached homes, and the alley is at the rear of the properties. The alley is also included within each lot. The average lot, or the minimum lot size required in DTR is 4,500 square feet. The average lot size proposed on the applicant's site plan is 4,758 square feet. And the 16-foot alley covers about 570 square feet of each of those lots. There's a similar variance that was requested in the adjacent development to the east of Main Phase 2. There's also a variance request to reduce the side setback, which is 0, but we do require 10 feet between structures. Applicant is asking to reduce that to 8 feet between structures, so that's between each of the homes. According to the applicant's application, the intent of that variance is to accommodate a tree save. So there's some oak trees within this pocket park here. And that side setback reduction will accommodate that. And then, of course, the last variance is the variance to allow an encroachment into a stream buffer. This is a 150-foot stream buffer. The applicant is proposing an 80-foot enhanced buffer on the north side of the stream. So the stream is off this property on the Alpharetta First United Methodist Church property down here to the south, and the buffer extends up into the property. So the applicant is asking to reduce that buffer to accommodate an enhanced stream buffer. The enhanced stream buffer would include removal of invasive species and revegetation of the northern portion of the buffer. The stream was piped on the Alpharetta First United Methodist Church property, which received stream buffer variances from the state and from the city back in 2012. East of Main 2, to the east of this development, also received a stream buffer variance to reduce the 150-foot buffer down to 75 feet in order to keep that stream, portion of the stream open. And then, of course, the stream is then piped again further to the east where it goes underneath Cricket Lane. This is the applicant's site plan. Of course, the site plan depicts 11 single-family detached homes oriented to Cummings Street. Of course, the entrance is just offset from Manning Drive. The ideal situation would have had the entrance lined up with Manning Drive. In order to accommodate the tree save area here with the pocket park, the applicant did move the driveway further to the west. The applicant did provide a traffic study indicating that this would be safe turning movements, and our senior traffic engineer did concur with the findings of that traffic study. The applicant provides an 8-foot sidewalk along the frontage of these homes along Cummings Street. And as I mentioned before, the average lot size is it's almost 4,800 square feet. Lots range anywhere from 4,500 square feet up to 5,800 square feet. These homes are 2 stories on Cummings Street, facing Cummings Street, so 2 stories over a basement. And each of the homes has a courtyard in the front and a rear covered deck. So there is an 18-foot driveway underneath this rear covered deck. So they are meeting the minimum driveway requirement. And of course, there are garages at the rear of each home where 2 cars can park side by side. So they are meeting their required parking, both in the garage as well as the guest parking within the driveway. The applicant also provided a parking agreement with the church that allows for access up to 12 additional unassigned parking spaces. Those parking spaces would be available for guests of this development at all times except for on Sunday mornings during church services. As I mentioned, there's trees on this property. It's primarily hardwoods. The tree saves, there are 2 oaks that are located here that are indicated to be saved. The applicant's tree survey and assessment also identified 2 additional oaks in this area that the applicant does believe that they can also save. There are a couple additional trees on the tree survey that are addressed in the condition with respect to tree saves. There are 2 magnolias out along Cummings Street, and there are 2 red buds over here. Staff believe that those location of the 2 magnolias and the 2 red buds could have been slightly off on the tree survey. Arborists typically will use GPS locating on those trees on their tree surveys, and the locations can be slightly off. So we've addressed those 4 trees in the conditions, and I'll bring that back up once we get to those conditions. Of course, detention would be provided through the church's existing detention ponds. There's a double pond that is to the rear of this development, and there is, according to the applicant, additional capacity built into those ponds to serve this development. The applicant also provided renderings of the development. The renderings reflect Tudor, Georgian, Federal, and Greek Revival architectural styles. The applicant's architect states that the homes will be primarily brick or siding with stone and hard coat stucco accents. The elevations were reviewed by the downtown consultant who believes that the proposal is appropriate. If approved, we're just recommending that the renderings comply with the downtown consultant's comments. The applicant did submit a trip generation report, which estimates that the subdivision would generate 13 a.m. peak hour trips and 12 p.m. peak hour trips. This application was shown to the public at the January 13th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were some questions about the size, price point, and parking, and all the comments were in support of the applicant's proposal. Staff has reviewed the applicant's proposal and finds the request to not be in conflict with the established criteria. The zoning is consistent with the use and development of property nearby properties which are developed with similar residential uses and densities. And approval of the variance should not cause substantial detriment to the public good. If approved, we are recommending that as part of the stream buffer encroachment, that the encroachment be properly mitigated, so we are recommending some additional mitigation. This item was considered at the February 4th Planning Commission meeting. Staff recommended approval subject to 21 conditions. There was one public comment from a future resident of East Domain 2, Phase 2, asking about the applicant's construction timeline as well as the landscaping along the eastern property line. After discussion, Planning Commission recommended unanimously to recommend approval subject to staff's recommended conditions, and those are Condition 1. Condition 1 identifies the zoning of the property as DTR and limits it to the site plan dated January 20th, 2021. Condition 2, the comprehensive land use plan designation of the property shall be downtown residential density. Condition 3 deals with the architecture and materials and ties it to the submitted renderings. There are additional conditions that require that a minimum of 6 of the homes, so just over half of the homes, shall be four-sided brick or stone, and each home shall have unique elevation with respect to design, material, and color, and that a minimum of 6 of the homes have a chimney, and that a minimum of 6 homes have a front covered porch. 4, building height shall be limited to no more than 2 stories and 35 feet along Cummings Street. 5, lots shall have a front yard defined by a decorative low wall or hedge with columns as approved by DRB. Hardscape in front yards is limited to decorative brick pavers and or stepping stones and shall not cover more than 25% of the front yard. And we did limit the amount of that front courtyard that could be covered with any hardscape because, one, we wanted to make sure that we got the required landscape strip along Cummings Street, and also because the alley is within the lots, we wanted to keep down the impervious surface of each of the lots. Condition 6, side setback shall be 8 feet between structures, and private alley shall be permitted to count toward meeting the minimum lot size. Variances to maximum lot coverage shall not be permitted. 7, deals with the Cummings Street streetscape and how that's constructed. 8 requires shade trees along Cummings Street in the planter as well as behind the sidewalk in the 10-foot landscape strip. Condition 9 requires that the residential alley at the rear of the homes meet the streetscape standards in the Alpharetta Downtown Code. 10, project entrance shall include decorative paver apron, landscaping, and low wall. Condition 11, northwest corner of the property shall include a community focal feature as approved by and that should be the Cultural Arts Commission. There's a focal point feature that's called out on the applicant site plan in this location. That's what we're referring to. Condition 12 deals with the pocket park at this location, just making sure that that's developed as a park-like setting and with the necessary improvements, decorative landscaping, hardscape, low walls, and seating. Condition 3 requires vines planted on retaining and low walls. Condition 4 deals with the tree saves, so identifying, limiting to the applicant's site plan that reflects the 2 oak tree saves in the pocket park dated January 20th, 2021. It also addresses the 2 magnolias and the 2 redbuds. Basically what we're saying here is we're asking if any of those trees are found to be savable, so that their locations were off in that survey and they can be saved by maybe wrapping a sidewalk around the trees, then the applicant should make every effort to save those. Condition 15, developer shall plant the area west of Lot 1 to landscape buffer standards, which is this location here. And then, of course, the required 5-foot landscape strip that's required between residential to residential. Condition 16, fences and walls visible from the public right-of-way shall be decorative as approved by staff. Unfinished wood fences and decks shall not be visible from the street. Condition 17 requires that the developer provide the city with the parking agreement that I mentioned earlier with the church for the 12 off-site parking spaces prior to the issuance of an LDP. Condition 18 specifically deals with the stream buffer encroachment mitigation. The applicant proposed the 80-foot enhanced buffer, which is only on the north side of the stream, the existing stream, and on the church's property. The staff reviewed that and took the stream buffer mitigation a little bit further and recommended 4 different options that the applicant can work with staff to provide additional mitigation, and that includes an option where there would be stream removal of invasives and replanting on the south side of the stream as well on the church's property. Condition number 9 requires that the developer provide an additional 20% channel protection. That deals specifically with the detention ponds, and the intent of condition number 19 was to deal with, to address stormwater runoff. Condition 20, garbage pickup shall be from the alley, not Cumming Street. We just wanted to make sure that we didn't have a line of rollout garbage dumpsters along Cumming Street, that would be done from the alley. And condition number 21, no more than 10% of the residential units shall be permitted to be rented as recorded in the HOA's declaration and covenants. And that concludes the staff report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Councilman Hypes.
Mr. Woodman, I'd like to ask you about 4 conditions, 17, 20, 21, and yet to be named 22. And in the slide that has the rear decks on it, can you access that? Oh, maybe it's right there on your, there it is, okay. So starting with condition number 17 about parking, is there going to be provided some sort of ingress, egress apart from the sidewalk into the rear of the development from the church parking lot? Or will folks be parking in the church parking lot as guests and then walking all the way around to the entrance where the main entrance is?
We hadn't really explored that. We can certainly add, there are no provisions for a pedestrian to, say, walk from this parking spot over to the development. So we could add something to the condition to require some kind of sidewalk connection there. Otherwise, yes, they would have to walk through the parking lot to the sidewalk.
Okay. Well, if it's going to be guest parking, I'm just trying to ascertain how they're going to get from there to there. Okay. Number 20, is the rear alley large enough, wide enough for trash pickup? Based on this depiction that I see here and the Republic truck that pulls up in front of my townhome, and decks extending from the rear and the height of these trucks, has anybody verified that trash pickup is even doable on that alley?
So I did tell the applicant early on that this was going to be a condition added in the staff report, and I told them that they'll need to coordinate with the garbage company. I believe the applicant may have some information in that regard during their presentation, but I will say that we have reviewed that alley with respect to fire, and fire is able to bring a fire truck into the alley.
And I did see that from the Planning Commission presentation, but I haven't seen whether the hydraulic lift for the trash cans can extend out and flip over and still have enough room for the trucks.
Sure.
Which would come once a week, unlike a fire truck.
Yeah. And we did discuss that with the applicant, and the applicant even mentioned that they may have to get a garbage truck in there that is smaller than the usual.
Yeah, Actually, I'm not interested in 21, but related to parking and access. Number 21 has to do with HOA. I will be happy to ask the applicant, would appreciate the applicant addressing this. Can we have it required that anybody who resides there will make sure that any delivery trucks deliver within the premises? Now, out here in front of East of Main, there's enough room when the FedEx truck and the UPS truck parks out there every single day on Academy Street, because they can't get back in there on East of Main, for cars to go around them. I do not perceive that necessarily to be the case in a safe way on Cumming Street, because it doesn't have the width of Academy Park over here in front of it. So, or excuse me, Academy Street in front of East of Main. So, is it doable to have an HOA restriction that requires residents to have deliveries made to the home within?
I mean, we can certainly add a condition, require
Or a
them
condition.
to put that in their HOA covenants and declarations.
This is a beautiful development. I've told them I just think it's absolutely beautiful, but we cannot have delivery trucks stopped on Cumming Street to go find a place and make deliveries. And so I just wanted to know if that's something that we can condition, which would be yet to be named 22.
Understood.
Yeah, that's all I have, Mayor.
Councilwoman Richard.
Thank you, Mayor. To follow up on Councilmember Hype's discussion about delivery trucks, Michael, we talked about the mail delivery, and I think you had indicated that the individual delivery to homes would not be provided by the post office, that they would have a kiosk.
Correct.
Is it in the Pocket Park, the location?
I don't have a confirmation from the applicant that that's where they intend to keep the mail kiosk. I believe that that was probably the only location available for such mail kiosk. We can confirm that with the applicant, but that would, yes, likely that would be the location. The post office would not allow for individual mailboxes for each unit. It would have to be at a central location. And there would be, in those kiosks, what they do is they'll provide some larger mailboxes that can accommodate boxes, and then as those are delivered, the keys are taken and put into that resident's mailbox so that they can collect the box there. Of course, boxes that are larger that can be accommodated in the kiosk would have to be delivered to each home individually.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Woodman. Would the applicant like to come forward?
I have to talk unmasked. It's very difficult with that thing on. Mayor and council, I'm Don Rollator. My address is 200 Foothills Parkway, Marble Hill, Georgia, 30148. I'm representing tonight Vision Development Partners, LLC, for the creation of an 11-lot subdivision of single-family homes on 1.6 acres on Cumming Street. Presenting tonight will be Steve Smith first, who is principal in Vision Development Partners. Chris Owens, who is principal in Plum Creek Consulting, who is our land planner. David Grace, principal in A Classical Studio, who is our architect. And Jeremy Scott, who is representing Alpharetta First United Methodist Church. Additionally, our landscape architect, Pat Corkle, is here. He's the principal in Pat Corkle Landscape Architecture. If you have any questions for him, he'll be happy to respond. The request is threefold. It's for a change in the CLUP from public institutional education to downtown residential density. A change in zoning is requested from OI and R15 to DTR. 3 variances are requested, and Michael did an excellent job of explaining those during his presentation. I won't go over those again at this time. All 3 requests are recommended for approval by staff, and have the unanimous recommendation of approval from Planning Commission. At this point in time, I will turn the podium over to Steve Smith to continue our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Mayor Gilvin and members of the council, it's a pleasure to come before you tonight. My name is Stephen Smith. I live at 380 Majestic Cove in Milton, Georgia, 30004. My wife, Wendy, and I have lived in the Alpharetta area for 21 years, and we've called it home. This is actually my second time, or actually third time, really, coming before the council. We were also involved in the development of the Courtyard Hotel across from Avalon as well, about 3 years ago. I'm president of Vision Development Partners, the applicant tonight. Tonight you're going to hear from some very talented members of our development team. We're very blessed to have some first-class help in getting to this point tonight. It's been about a 2-year process since we first started talking with the church, so this is quite an accomplishment to be in front of you tonight. One of the things that I've always tried to do in my 35-year real estate career is always surround myself with people who are smarter than I am on my development team. And my wife always says I never seem to have a problem doing that. So I don't know if she meant that as a compliment, but nonetheless. I think I may have shared with some of you the origin of the name, the 1858. My son came up with that. And he came up with the logo, and he sent it to me, and I called him. I said, I really like it, son, but what's the significance of the 1858? And he kind of started laughing. He goes, Dad, you might want to know that. And I go, what do you mean, son? He goes, well, that's the year Alpharetta was founded. So I've learned something through the process from my son on this. As Don mentioned, the 1858 will be a residential development of 11 detached homes. The homes will be approximately 3,500 square feet. The couple things that we have added into this development, in addition to the architecture, which David Grace will speak about, and the land planning and landscape plan that Chris Owens will talk about, but we've added the outdoor living space in the back of these units. This project kind of started with me looking around for a place for Wendy and I to downsize and move to, and I enjoy cooking out in the grill and having outdoor space. So I was not about to consider moving anywhere that didn't have that, and I think it's a unique amenity that's hard to find in downtown Alpharetta. I will say that over my years in the business, we've been fortunate to develop in 15 different jurisdictions, and I'll tell you, and I mean this sincerely, that the city of Alpharetta is head and shoulders. The staff, Kathy, Michael, are the best jurisdiction that we've ever worked with. And so they're tough, but they're fair. And that's all you can ask as a developer. So tonight, I'm just kind of in summary. We believe the project, the 1858, is a first-class development. We believe it's going to be a complement to our neighbors at the Alpharetta First United Methodist Church, the neighborhoods along Cumming Street, and most importantly, the city of Alpharetta. And so we would ask for your support tonight and appreciate your consideration and time. Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I want to again thank Michael for his presentation. There's really not much for me to speak to, and I apologize. I'm going to move my computer if I can. Thank you, James. Thank you, James. As Michael described, there's 3 variances. I won't go into those in detail. He did such a good job with it. But those 3 variances are really interconnected and intertwined. The stream buffer variance and the alley as part of the lot are interrelated such that the depth of the property is very shallow, is very wide. That stream buffer encroaches up into the property almost up to Cumming Street. So in order to get everything in, we couldn't have a separate alley and a deeper lot. We just didn't have a choice. So that's where those 2 variance requests interact. The separation of the homes, as Michael said, interacts with the alley being part of the lot as well as the tree safe. That central park, we laid it out with the driveway lining up with Manning Drive originally. That would have been the preferred. And we got the tree survey back, and the nicest trees on the property are right across from Manning Drive. So that's why we worked with the traffic engineer to study that, make sure that it was going to be safe, but also would help us save that central green space. And that extra 2 feet added up across all the units does add up enough to keep us away from those trees and help us save those. So there were some questions asked, and I'll cover those as best I can. Councilman Heights, you asked about condition 17 and entry and exit from the church parking lot. There is certainly capability to provide a pedestrian connection off that west end from behind the units over to the parking lot and back. And that's something we'd be happy to work with on the church to make sure people could conveniently walk through there instead of having to walk up to Cumming Street, down the street, and then back to the property. You asked if the rear alley was wide enough for trash service. It is wide enough to get a fire truck in there. Fire marshal doesn't want to get a truck back there, but he can if he needs to. I've spoken with Republic Services, the city's contract provider for residential trash service. They have trucks that are on a F550 truck body. The ones we see going down the road are the much larger ones that you described, Mr. Himes. The F550 truck bodies are like a small mini dump truck body, but they still contain the trash. So this HOA would have to request what they call a special service to have a smaller truck come that would be more maneuverable. And we are looking at options. We want these things to be livable. There are some townhome developments that we've seen constructed where it's a 2-car garage, but once you put your trash container and a couple of storage bins, you can only get 1 car in the garage. These units are wider. They have a 20-foot wide entry for the garage, a 20-foot wide by 20-foot deep driveway. So Michael mentioned 18, it's actually 20. So these are being designed to be livable, so you have room to put the trash can inside and still park 2 cars. And we're also looking at a place to put a mail kiosk as well as possibly for the trash cans to be parked on the opposite side of the alley from the driveways and the home, so we don't have that conflict. So we are talking to Republic, and we will get those issues solved. So I believe those cover the questions. Ms. Richard, you asked about mail delivery and kiosk, and that'll be placed likely in a central location on one corner of the park or the other.
Can you address the delivery truck situation, or is that for someone else?
The condition for delivery truck, I can tell you that it's physically possible, but I would defer to Steve Smith to answer whether or not about the condition on the HOA covenants. So with that, I've got, I had a full presentation, but Michael did such a good job. I'll leave it to David Grace to talk to you a bit about the architecture.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is David Grace. I live at 2564 Hearthstone Circle, Marietta, Georgia 30062. As we said earlier, I'm a principal at a classical studio. We did West Main townhomes over off Canton Street and are very familiar with doing work here in Alpharetta and really appreciate the opportunity. Here at 1858, we decided that we wanted to give the development a more natural look. So rather than pick a single style and develop all of the homes in one style, we decided to use several pre-approved styles that City of Alpharetta has already identified as appropriate styles for the community. Those are that we're looking at are Tudor, Federal, Georgian, and Greek Revival, giving it a more natural look as if the development has developed over time. Each home will have its own custom elevation. It will look like a development of custom homes, even though there may be some plans that repeat through the development. The majority of the exterior will be brick, as we said earlier, with some accents of stone, stucco, timber. We're going to try and bring the front of this development to life. You know, when we're looking at this development, it's got a prominent front facade facing the main street. So we're going to add porches to, I think the condition is at least 6 homes, but we'll have porches or stoops on all of the homes. We're going to have authentic, accurately proportioned details, classical details, pediments on the homes. We're going to use quality design elements such as operable shutters, gas lanterns, window boxes to help liven the front elevation as well. And then again, we've talked a lot about outdoor living and how important it is here in Alpharetta. So we not only have the front porches, but we've also got the back decks that go out over the driveway. We're going to have rooftop, the option of having rooftop decks or porches incorporated into the roof on the back, so you won't see those on the front. So from the front, we'll have 2-story facades. On the back, we'll have additional outdoor living. And just trying to interact with the city. You know, as you walk, you know, trying to think about what that experience is walking down the street for all of the neighborhoods as they pass by on the way to downtown. We'll be walking down the sidewalk, trees planted, hedges, fences, walls, small manicured yards, outdoor porches with porch swings and people, and just really try and make that a friendly, pleasant experience for everyone, not just the homeowners, but everyone who has to walk by. So if you've got any questions, please let me know.
Any questions from council? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Scott. I live at 530 Veranda Court, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30009. Unlike Steve and Chris, I have zero experience talking in front of City Council, so I apologize in advance if I'm a little nervous. I am here representing the Alpharetta First United Methodist Church. I'm currently serve on the Board of Trustees of the church. I am the current chair of that board. I have been on the Board of Trustees since 2012 at the church, and I've spent 5 of those years as the church president and 2 as vice president. So I have extensive experience with all of the ins and outs and projects that we've done over the past decade, and just want to note that we've been very blessed to have an extraordinary relationship with the city on a lot of those projects, work with Kathy and y'all's team extensively. So thank you on behalf of our church members on the relationship we've had. We've been working with Steve and his team for over a year, I think, or more on this project, or a project on our property. And when we were approached about this potential development, it was very intriguing because it's on a kind of back corner of our property that we've really never had any, we've never been able to really create any plan for what will we do with that space. We have a few buildings back there that are aging considerably and have always been trying to decide, you know, what do we do? Can we invest? Is there something we can do back there? And we've never come up with a really good plan. So when we were approached by Steve and his team, we thought this is a very interesting prospect that we need to take to our church leaders. For those of you that are unaware of how the Methodist Church works, we operate based on a book called the book, besides the Bible, of course, we operate based on a book called the Book of Discipline that controls everything we do within the church. So to undertake a project like this, it's not something you just do overnight. It takes a significant amount of progress, process, and agreement to come to where we are tonight. It goes through staff and clergy, and it goes through a leadership committee that we have in the church. Then it goes to the Board of Trustees for recommendation. It goes to the Finance Committee for approval. That's just at our church level. Then it goes above to the broader district that has a specific building committee that has to approve of anything that has to do with land. Then once it gets approval there and by the district superintendent, then it comes back down to the church, where we open it up to what we call a call to charge church conference, where every member of our church has the ability to speak and vote on the process. and I don't know if any of you are members of church, but getting people to agree on just what color the sky is outside can be a coin toss. So something of this gravity, we take very seriously. We put it in front of the church. Our book of discipline only requires that 50% plus one of our congregation agree to it, and we would be allowed to move forward. Our trustees decided that that was not a good enough threshold. So when we brought it in front of our congregation, we had decided that we wanted to have at least 70% approval before we moved forward with something like this, really wanting a mandate. It turned out we got 88% approval, which I just thought was an overwhelming vote of confidence from our congregation. So I kind of stand before you on behalf of a church and a congregation that's overwhelmingly in support of this project. And, when this comes to fruition, there's a lot of things that we're going to be able to do with some of the proceeds of this sale. Immediately, there'll be an infusion in our missions program, which serves people both locally and internationally. We're going to have improvements to some of the aging buildings on our property, specifically the Hope House, which is kind of back there near this development. We've used that for a variety of purposes. Action ministries, transitional housing, a lot of good that we've gotten done out of that building. We're working to remove kind of the modular units that are behind our property, which are somewhat of an eyesore. So this will allow some funds to continue with that project. Parking lot improvements. We're kind of blessed with a lot of parking spaces in downtown Alpharetta, which is really a gift. We've worked with the city in the past. When the city center project was going on, we opened up our parking lot for employees and restaurant guests and folks in downtown Atlanta. So now we'll have the ability of some funds to even do some more improvements to our parking facility, which continues to be used by the broader community in Alpharetta, and as well some debt reduction. So other than that, just here to say thank you for your time, thank you for your service, and just let you know that our church is wholeheartedly behind approval of this project. And I'll here to answer any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions from council at this time? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Mr. Smith, thank you for being here tonight. I'm glad to hear there was over 80% approval from the church body. So the modular units will be removed from the property. That they were placed there temporarily years ago, so they will be removed.
Yeah, they were a school for a while.
Yeah.
Then we were thankful. We've always been wanting to get rid of them. We did a very recent construction development project where we did some renovation, add some space. During that, we were thankful we still had them because we actually used that time to relocate some of our staff back there during that process. So now we've moved that staff back inside. They're kind of storage right now, but yes, it is our plan. We have already voted to remove those. We're actually having one of them removed, I think, by this week. Mod C will be removed this week, and then we'll use these funds to remove Mod B, and then hopefully find a way to utilize that space, some additional parking, and figure out the best thing to do with it.
Sure, thank you. And also, one other question: as far as guest parking from the development, is the church or your committee okay with guest parking occasionally on that?
Absolutely. From our perspective, we have a large parking surface that really is only used for a few hours, a week, and we have this excess parking. We think balancing that against the improvement that these development does to the community, and then hopefully the ability to maybe recruit some new members. We think it's a win-win for both parties to be able to utilize those spaces that way.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And just to follow up on that question, so you don't see any issue with building a pedestrian connection to that adjacent parking and the development?
I don't see any, in my mind, that's the best way to do it. We wouldn't want people walking through other parts of the parking lot where they potentially have any other risk of shorter the better, in my opinion.
Thank you. Just thought I'd ask while you were here. Any other questions from council? Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mayor and council, that concludes the presentation of the applicant on this rezoning. If council or the mayor has any questions of any of our presenters at this point in time, we're certainly open to that. Upon the continuing with public comment. At the end of that time, if necessary, we reserve a little time for rebuttal. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Rollator,
Yeah. Mr. Hines.
what do you think about the whole vehicles that are servicing the homes there? Could be an Uber, could be delivery trucks, might be a limousine service, or the maid service. I'm just naming the ones that park on Academy Street over here in front of East Domain is all I'm doing here. So you think we can have something where the development would agree that that would be something that they would require, and so if they saw a truck backing up or endangering traffic out on Cummings Street, that they would feel obligated to go do something about it?
I think I'll probably let Mr. Smith respond to that, or one of our other ones. I think Steve's the right person on that. I understand simply that we can request it, and trying to train UPS and FedEx may be a bit of a challenge from time to time. But let me let him directly address it, because he'll be creating the homeowners association.
Stop leaving masks up here on the podium. So that's a good point that you brought up, and I appreciate you bringing it up, Councilmember Hypes. We'd be happy to have that inserted in the HOA agreement. I understand the purpose, that you don't want to have traffic backed up on Cummings Street for delivery, and we'd be happy to put that as part of the HOA agreement.
And would you be amenable to that being condition number 22, subject to working out the wording for the motion?
Yes, subject to working out the wording, yes, absolutely.
Any other questions from council at this time? Thanks, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
Yes, sir. I have 2 public comment cards.
Okay.
Thomas LeCain, 255 Cricket Lane, Alpharetta.
Mayor, council members, thank you for having me this evening. Tom LeCain, 255 Cricket Lane. Obviously, I'm very close by. 36-year resident of Alpharetta, 16 years on Cricket Lane. So it's gone through quite a transition over these years. It was when I used to tell people that I lived in downtown Alpharetta, and I'd tell them I live on Cricket Lane. Nobody knew where it was. So we've seen a lot of changes there. I will like to add that when we knew that development was coming and things were changing in downtown Alpharetta, that I was here for the first presentation for East Domain, and initially the development that Providence Group presented was a gated, closed community, and I knew there was some challenge for some folks, discussions about opening up Cricket Lane down to Cummings Street. But I felt that that was a good thing for this community. And seeing East Domain come through, and certainly through the vision of our council members and mayors and the leadership of this community, Cricket Lane has become really, without a doubt, one of the most charming streets in downtown Alpharetta. And so I really feel like this development really just ties everything together through from Academy Street all the way over to Cummings Street, and certainly adds that pedestrian aspect to it. And we've already got Manning on the Square, which is of course is going to be coming through too. But all of this just gets tied together, and it really puts together a really nice aspect of what I think the vision of our council members and our leadership of Alpharetta has wanted to see through here. So I certainly speak in favor for this development coming through. So thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Jim Pixley, 245 Cricket Lane, Alpharetta.
Hi.
Pretty much like Tom said, I live on Cricket Lane. I'm a neighbor. I've watched everything in downtown just kind of develop. It's just been kind of a wonderful thing to see everything come to fruition, coming to these meetings and watching, developers present their plans and then see it actually come out to be pretty much probably better than anybody thought it would be. But again, just as a neighbor, just to say I'm for this, I think it does tie in and kind of complete this block for downtown. The elevations are nice, and the pocket park and the sidewalk aspect, just kind of tying it all together and completing the block. But so, as a neighbor, thumbs up.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else, Ms. Cobb?
No, sir.
But if there's anyone else here that would like to come forward, now's your opportunity to do so. Just as a reminder, please state your name and address.
Okay. I apologize. I didn't know you were supposed to sign up to speak at the council meeting, so I appreciate you taking a few minutes to at least hear my comments. My name is Dave Pratt. I'm a member of Alpharetta United Methodist Church, and I'm here as a representative of the church. As Jeremy was stating, I've been a member of the church for over 25 years, and I've never been involved with a vote within the church to see anybody at the church vote on something at an 88% rate. It's almost near impossible. So there is a big support from the church. We're excited because that particular house that we own on that property is an aging house. It's an eyesore. And as you can see, this development that they've recommended is absolutely beautiful. We're excited to have these, to be working with Vision as a partner. And I think the church is truly excited about the potential of 11 new members of the church in this community. So, this is the type of development that we're looking for within the church, and the church's expansion and new construction ties in with this very beautifully. So I just want to let you know, as a member of the church, we are in full support of this development. So thank you for your time, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here that would like to come forward and speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion to approve CLUP-21-01/Z-21-02/V-21-03, the 1858. The conditions as read by Mr. Woodman, conditions 1 through 16. No changes to those conditions. On condition number 17, prior to the issuance of the LDP, developer shall provide the city with a copy of a parking agreement with Alpharetta Methodist United Church for 12 off-site parking spaces. I will also add a sentence to address the pedestrian connection. Condition is a pedestrian connection shall be provided from the off-site parking with final approval by staff. And I will add condition number 22 to address Council Members Hype's concerns. HOA shall require vehicles for services of homes in 1858, such as delivery vehicles, limousines, housekeeping, etc., shall park in the development and not on Cumming Street. And that is the end of my motion.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Richard and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. And that motion was to approve CLUP 21-01/Z-21-02/V-21-03, the 1858 residential subdivision, with the conditions as read by Councilwoman Richard. Any questions about the motion? Any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
I think this is a beautiful development, and it ties together the church's desire to sell that property and to do something with that corner. And it also brings about another beautiful neighborhood from this developer. As you know, we as a council cannot pick and choose our developers, but I couldn't be happier with what you've done over at West of Main and Mr. Grace. The architecture that you've done there is very much complementary with our downtown design goals, and so as the one council member who lives closest to this development, I couldn't be happier, and I think all of our neighbors in the surrounding area will be extremely glad to see the kind of development that you all are putting forward. So thank you so much.
Any other discussion? That being said, go ahead and call the vote on the motion to approve as conditioned read by Councilwoman Richard. All those in favor vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Congratulations, gentlemen. So that wrap up the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. And we'll move on to old business. Item under old business tonight is the approval of the fiscal year 2021 mid-year budget amendment. This is the second reading. Director Harris, I believe you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the second reading of the fiscal year 2021 mid-year budget amendment. The only change from the first reading is the appropriation of $115,000 for the town green artificial turf in the capital project fund from unallocated capital.
Any questions from council? Thank you, sir. Mr. Thomas, do you mind reading the ordinance,
Yes,
please,
sir? An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to adopt the mid-year fiscal 2021 budget for certain funds of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, appropriating the amounts shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the items of revenue anticipation, prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. Whereas the Director of Finance has presented a proposed fiscal year 2021 mid-year budget to the City Council on certain funds of the city, and whereas each of these proposed amendments will adjust expenditures and revenues originally appropriated in fiscal year 2021 budget, and whereas each of these mid-year amendments represent a balanced budget so that anticipated revenues for each fund equal or exceed proposed expenditures, now therefore be it ordained that this mid-year budget, Exhibit A, attached hereto and by this reference made a part here of this ordinance, shall be the City of Alpharetta's fiscal year 2021 mid-year budget for these certain funds for the fiscal year 2021. And be it further ordained that this mid-year budget be and is hereby approved in the revenue items shown in the budget for each fund in the amounts anticipated or adopted. And the several amounts shown in the budget for each fund as proposed expenditures are hereby appropriated to the department named in each fund. And be it further ordained that the expenditures shall not exceed the appropriations authorized by this mid-year budget or amendments thereto provided, and that this expenditure shall not exceed actual funding available.
Thanks, sir. Any questions from council? Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item? If there's anyone that would like to come forward and speak on the mid-year budget amendment, now's your chance to do so. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. I move that we approve the ordinance to adopt the mid-year fiscal 2021 budget as read in full by Sam Thomas.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Binder and a second by Councilwoman Richard to approve the fiscal year 2021 mid-year budget amendment as read by City Attorney Sam Thomas. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve, please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it passes 6-1. That'll wrap up old business for tonight, and we'll move on to new business for tonight. And first item up on new business, excuse me, is a list of approved substitute municipal court judges. Ms. Lappin, What have you done to your arm?
I've gotten old, apparently. Turning 40 has been fun this year.
No, you're not old, because that makes me way old.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As per the city charter, I'm submitting a list of judges to fill in the absence of our chief judge per the city charter. So, any questions?
Do we have any questions?
Sorry, I'm submitting a list of substitute judges to be used in the absence of our chief judge.
Do we have any questions from council about the appointment of these judges? Thank you, well done. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on these?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on the appointment of additional judges, please do so now. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that City Council approve the appointment of Lee Whiteside, Jared Mitnick, Richard Hicks, and Scott Carter as substitute part-time judges.
We have a motion by Councilman Hypes and a second by Councilman Merkel. And that motion was to approve the appointment of the substitute municipal court judges. I don't have their names in front of me, but as read by Councilman Hypes. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd just like to, I know three of these folks personally, and they're just outstanding attorneys, and the city's going to be very well served by that panel of substitute judges. And also today is Judge Zimmerman's birthday, so happy birthday to Judge Zimmerman. So.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion from council? I'll go ahead and call for the vote to approve the list of municipal substitute court judges. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Happy birthday, Judge Zimmerman, wherever you are. Next item up under new business is resolution for the Alpharetta Regional, Alpharetta. It's about time. People are always saying Atlanta when they come here. The resolution for the Atlanta Regional Commission LCI supplemental study for the South Main Street corridor. Ms. Cook, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is consideration of a resolution authorizing the submission of the South Main Street Creative Placemaking Plan. I'll make sure I have that. Oh, it's on your screen, I think. The area would be from Old Milton Parkway over to Upper Hembry Road. And you may remember we did a survey as part of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, and out of, I think it was a little over 700 people responded. And South Main was listed as number 2, the area that we should look at for redevelopment and future planning. So as part of our in-house efforts for the Horizon 2040 Comprehensive Plan public outreach effort, we wanted to do a small area plan. So the request is to be able to submit this to the Atlanta Regional Commission as part of the already approved LCI for downtown. And we would look at public space activation, interactive art strategies, and concepts to promote the redevelopment of South Main Street into a mixed-use walkable area. We did receive letters of support from the Amana Academy, Mayfair Partners, Village Park, Arts Alpharetta, the North Fulton CID, Bike Alpharetta, as well as the Cultural Arts Commission. And the cost, we estimate the cost for this to be $80,000, and there would be a 20% match required by the city, which would be $16,000. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have about this initiative.
Councilman Binder.
Director Cook, I just want to applaud you. We're rushing to sign the ordinance for the mid-year budget, so we can hear your item right now. There's a quote I use as, plans are useless and planning is essential. And I know I get short on the plans, but I understand they're necessary so we can do the fantastic planning that you guys have done. So
thank you.
I know this is just something that will help us in the future create something great, or you can force somebody to create something great for us.
Agree, thank
So,
you.
thank you for, and also thank you for finding partners that'll pay for 80% of it. So keep doing that.
Any other questions from council at this time? Thank you, Ms. Cook. Mr. Thomas.
Sir, a resolution to authorize the mayor and city council to approve the submission of the South Main Street Creative Placemaking Plan grant application to the Atlanta Regional Commission. Whereas the Alpharetta City Council adopted the Downtown Master Plan Update, Downtown LCI, in 2015, and whereas the ARC provides local assistance programs to implement facets of the LCI within the designated study area, including the LCI program and Community Development Assistance Program, CDAP. And whereas the City of Alpharetta seeks to participate in the LCI program to prepare a supplemental study to support creative placemaking along the South Main Street in the downtown LCI area. And whereas evidence authorizing the acceptance of said application must be provided, now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and City Council of the City of Alpharetta that the submission of the South Main Street Creative Placemaking Plan grant application is hereby approved. And if awarded, the mayor is hereby authorized to execute the award package with directives under the LCI program. And it is further resolved that the mayor and council be hereby acknowledge and agree to provide a cash match equivalent to 20% of the total study amount.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anybody would like to come forward, speak on the Atlanta Regional Commission LCI supplemental study for South Main Street corridor, now is your chance to do so. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion to approve authorization for submittal of a South Main Street Creative Placemaking Plan, LCI Supplemental Study Grant Applicant Regional Commission, and the resolution is read by Mr. Sam Thomas.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Richard and a second by Councilman Burnett. And that was to approve the resolution for the Atlanta Regional Commission LCI supplemental study for the South Main Street corridor. Any discussion? Seeing none, call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve the LCI supplemental study for the South Main Street corridor application, please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So that will wrap up this evening's new business portion of the agenda, and we'll move on to the workshops. First workshop this evening is possible wedding venue locations. Director Rogers and Ms. Rogers. Mrs. Rogers.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. As always, it's a pleasure to be here. Tonight we're talking about another fun possibility, and that's additional weddings in Alpharetta. With the assistance of the Alpharetta Convention and Visitors Bureau staff, several staff members within the city looked at possible wedding venues on city-owned property or the possible upgrade of some of those sites. And you have in a report, and I'd like to go through that tonight, as we have identified 4 of those locations. So I'm going to go through this real quickly. If you have any questions, you can stop me in the middle of it, or you can wait till the end. Well, the first one we want to look at is at the Mansell House, which is located in Wills Park. First question a lot of people say is, well, I thought they were already having weddings at the Mansell House. And in fact, they do have weddings at the Mansell House. But there's things that need to happen at the Mansell House to make it a grade A wedding site. And so we're going to be looking at that as we're moving forward. You can see this is one of the scenes, and as you're looking through, you can, even though this is a winter shot, you can still see that there is some landscaping that needs to be improved. The next shot will show you the existing gazebo, one of the 2 gazebos that needs to be replaced and upgraded there at the Mansell House. And then this is the other gazebo that, again, needs to be updated with some better lighting and a nice paint job and some additional landscaping. So we've got several recommendations for that. The general improvement of landscaping, and a backdrop for ceremonies, some increased lighting, And then we need to talk about, with the Historical Society, some improvement to the indoors. But that's not part of the proposal. The next shot will show you what we're recommending in order to bring the Mansell House up to what we think would be a good standard for weddings, is a fee of $11,500. That includes the landscaping, the removal of the smaller gazebo, replacing it with a wedding arbor, and doing additional lighting there as well. The next site we want to talk about is the formal courtyard at City Hall. That's just right here behind me, in front of y'all on the other side between here and the library. It is really real close to being wedding ready. In fact, it's not unusual to see a couple of people down there having a wedding. But what we'd like to do is to improve the general landscaping of the area. You can see here there's some of the boxwoods that needs to be replaced, and we just need to do a little bit of upgrade to that as we're moving through the pictures. And then we'll go one more. And then is general improvement of the landscaping, to enhance the backdrops of the two fountains. I'm sorry, I forgot what it was. I was thinking to myself, water comes out of it. What is it? It's a fountain. So the two fountains, and some additional landscaping. It would also have to permit the use of the community room as a bride's waiting area, if you will. So moving on to the next one, that we estimate that to be a $7,500 cost to do all of those things and bring it up. Then the next location that we have is the Art Center lawn and patio area. This is at the corner, obviously, of Canton Street and Mayfield, the new Art Center. It looks really nice, but it wasn't necessarily set up for a wedding. So we need to do a few improvements as we're moving through the pictures. We can talk about the general landscaping. The landscaping is very nice, but it wasn't, again, put in for weddings. And then we'd like to do some kind of backdrop for a wedding, hopefully it would be a piece of artwork that would serve as an artwork during the day, and then when it was a wedding, it could be enhanced and be a backdrop, and do some uplighting in the trees as well. And then we'd like to put some of those big fans to cool the veranda. And the price of that, including all of that, would be $25,000 for that. And then the last place we want to visit today is Rock Mill Park. Rock Mill Park, I was speaking to one of a council member today, and we were talking through this, and I realized that Rock Mill is really the only place we kind of retrofit for a wedding, because it really wasn't designed that. It was designed as an environmental park. So if we're going to do that, we have to do some retrofitting to that. Obviously some cleanup, a little pressure washing, some additional landscaping, and some screening of the area would be nice as well. And then we would, again, need some kind of backdrop for that. So if we move on past this one, and we would, again, that Rock Mill would bring us up to $27,500 to upgrade that. So that concludes my report as far as the physical sites that we would want to improve if we were going to move in this direction. And we have with us the President and CEO of the Alpharetta Convention and Visitors Bureau, Janet Rogers, is going to go over the marketing plan for this if we were to move forward. Ms. Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is kind of weird. Just so that you're familiar, the only venue that he talked about tonight was the Mansell House that we actually have on any of our collateral about a wedding venue. Everything else would be new to anything that the CBB would be marketing and promoting with its marketing engine, is what I call it. So that's the only one that we have. It's still considered kind of a small venue unless they put a tent out there. But I think some of the things they're talking about could really make it something for us to talk about more, having historic value and things like that too as a place to get married. So I gave you a list. We kind of got together in my office and said, you know, what would we do if we got these venues that we've talked about tonight? And also, we have a group sales lady that goes specifically for weddings. She goes to all the wedding shows. She specifically talks to the venues around Alpharetta, trying to get those brides to stay in our hotel since we don't have venues. So that's a little bit of a challenge. And when some of the other venues start getting hotels closer to them, then that will sort of knock us out of the competition. But right now we're getting some, even though they're getting married at the Manor and the Flint Hill and Little River Farms and places like that, we're getting the hotels from it. So that's helping us tremendously. So the first thing that we'd have to do is really talk with the Parks and Recreation Department to get the official name. What would it be called? The contacts, all the specifics of how large it is, how many people it accommodate, all of that type of information, the details. And so that way we could, once we have it, we can start sharing that with the public. We need to schedule a photographer that would need to go out and set it up so that a bride could look at it and say, oh, I could envision my wedding being there. So we would have to schedule the photographer to go out there and do that. We'd create both electronic and printed collateral materials. I think if we ended up with 4 wedding venues, we'd probably have its own collateral material that we would share with the public, the wedding industry contacts, and engaged couples when we find out they get engaged. We could write a press release and distribute it to all the local media, announcing the new venue. So we're looking as each one comes on, we would do all of these things. But if 2 came on at a time or all 4 of them came on at one time, then we would kind of make this larger with listing all of them opposed to doing this individually. But right now I'm putting this as each individual one coming on board, we would actually do all of these things I'm talking about. We would add the venue details and the contact on the CVB website on our landing page of City of Alpharetta wedding venues. Gets listed like that with the City of Alpharetta's name on it. We would add the venue and the venue contact to our event facilities guide. And I don't know how many people has actually seen that, but when it does, anything that comes into Alpharetta and it doesn't have room nights, we really don't spend a lot of time with them. We have an event guide that we put together. It has all the golf courses, all the restaurants that has meeting space. It has all the hotels that have meeting space, but no guest rooms needed after we vet it out. We send that out and we let them pick where they want to go and what they want to do for the event that they're having. It also has the number of people it'll accommodate and the contact information. So we keep that as a master database, and we are updating that event guide constantly. So these would automatically go on that. We'd create and distribute scheduled social media posts to announce and share information about each venue on our social media channels to our followers, totaling at least right now 71,000 people. We will research and evaluate paid opportunities for targeted Facebook ads, and then we could boost that to the most effective, groups to share the venue info with the engaged couples on Facebook. So we would try to target and find that. And then you can pay any amount that you want based on the money that we have coming in. The hospitality industry is having a little struggle right now, but we actually do still do a lot of Facebook advertising, but we may do $5 a day for 30 days and keep doing that for the quarter. So you can put any amount that you want to reach the targeted audience. And weddings are really locally, a little bit, Roswell, Johns Creek. I can't go to Chattanooga and get a wedding usually here. So it's pretty local. So we can target in different ways. We've used App and Media eBlast too to do some local targeting. So we can reach the people around here that we need to specifically for weddings. We can create and distribute a dedicated e-blast to our CVB newsletter, which has about 55,000 subscribers right now, about the new venue and what it offers. So we'll beef it up, it'll look good, and then we'll start sharing the information. We can partner with the venue contact to help them create a free venue listing on the knot.com and Wedding Wire. Those are free listings that we get to put all the venues on, complimentary. And then we can work with the City of Alpharetta contact. We do that a lot to get it on their website and send out through their newsletter. James will tell you when something major is going on that really involves the city and the CVB and something great that's happening, we share it, with him and say, now, would you put it on this and help us there? And he always helps us out. So that works for both of us. And then we contact local civic organizations. I do that all the time. I send it to the Rotary Club, ABA, the Alpharetta Chamber, the Historical Society, Arts Alpharetta, Tech Alpharetta, and I say, will you put this information and send it to all of the people that you have on your newsletters and up on the website? And they actually help us out too, so that would be a thing that we would add to it. We'd research and price out the local advertising opportunities, for the cost-effective way to get the word out about the venue is now open, available, or ready to go. And Then, this is all kind of initial and new because we don't have these wedding venues, but as we have them, then it starts get intertwining in with all of the collateral materials and kind of all the marketing and stuff that we talk about. But what I just mentioned, we would initially do a big push as soon as one of the venues came on board. So that's kind of more on the marketing side. I have a group sales team that they're out selling and trying to find the group business and the weddings. Like I said, we have a dedicated person for weddings. So here's what they would do. They would share and distribute the collateral piece for each venue with the following groups and individuals. All pending wedding leads that we have right now that we know are looking for something, we have those pending. We will go ahead and share that with them in our database. And then any new wedding leads or contacts the wedding specialist gets from individual referrals or trade shows that she goes to between now and, whenever we know it's on board. All third-party wedding planners and wedding vendors in the wedding specialist database. So we have a database of all of these people, that the cake makers and the planners and the florists and everybody like that. So we would start sharing the new venue with them, because sometimes the venue's not the first place to go to. Sometimes it might be the florist or the cake maker or something. So we have a big referral system among all of us. And all local event rental companies in the wedding specialist database, we ask them to get familiar with the space for event rental logistics and send the new venue info to their clients. All local bridal shops as referrals for couples coming to the venue. We'll ask them to share it. All Alpharetta hotel sales managers will actually put the collateral piece now with them, so that they're talking about the wedding venues that are closer by now to their hotels. And then the Alpharetta Wedding Alliance, we actually have a wedding group that we meet quarterly with, and it's the cakes and the, all the photographers, all these different people that service the wedding industry. So we meet with them. So we probably would start having it at that venue or something, or each venue. So we would invite them to be there so we could schedule that to happen. Faith-based planners, a lot of weddings come out of the churches, so we would actually start talking with the churches around here to make sure that their members and stuff know about it. And if they get a request for the church, that they call us for the hotel rooms and anything else that we can accommodate with our complimentary services. And just all other wedding venue contacts, referrals, such as the Country Club of the South, Atlanta National, the Metropolitan Club. Those are just to name a few. There's quite a few of them around here that we make sure that they know that this venue is available. Then we would host something with a lot of these venues. We'd host at the site some kind of familiarization tour. Depends on if we had one or two or ever how many we had, but we would actually have them meet there, either have a meeting there or just a site inspection, so we'd start sharing it and showing it and talking about it and letting it be a buzz. So those are things we can initially do once they come on board.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions from council?
Would you like me to?
Councilman Binder.
Mrs. Rogers, since you're up there, I'll ask first. So would the marketing cost, would that be under the ACVB, under the services that you all currently provide? So
yes.
Funds needed, so it wouldn't be similar to, what's the one we just did a marketing hit for in December?
Oh, that was a $50,000 Expedia campaign. That's a whole different thing. We're not talking about that kind of money because that went all over the country.
But it's not a similar framework, right? So the cost will be to the ACVB?
Yes.
And then with this kind of thing, you said a lot of people would be local. So do you think us having more facilities to hold the weddings, that it would equal more heads and beds?
Okay, I'll give you an example. I was thinking about that. We really didn't go after the meeting business forever because we really didn't have any hotels that could accommodate group meetings per se until the conference center came on. When it came on, we got to talk about meetings, so we got to get a lot of interest, and then we could vet them, and we're like, wait a minute, you're too large, you're just right, you're small, you're awesome. So, we vetted out the larger ones. So I think just talking about wedding venues will start drumming up some buzz, but it's kind of twofold. If they don't pick that venue, then it gives us the opportunity to try to get those room nights, and actually the city gets their portion of that occupancy tax too from the room nights. So it gives us kind of twofold. Finding those brides sometimes are a little bit harder than just if it was a meeting planner, an association, or a corporation. You just got to know when your daughter's getting married, and your daughter's getting married, or your son's getting married. So we have to know that so that somebody talks to us so that we can capture those room nights. If they step 1 foot over, like on Mansell Road, then they're in Roswell, and they're paying Roswell taxes and stuff. So we try to catch that interception as quickly as possible. So this just gives us opportunity for people to say, oh, well, they've got something for you to look at. So we think it would drum up a lot of interest for us to make sure we try to capitalize on that type of business. But let me kind of just, weddings are still big business. Let me give you a little bit, can I give you a couple of facts here, just so you're familiar? Okay, so what I tried to do is, I'm looking at kind of the way we're moving forward so that I look before the pandemic, in the pandemic, and after, because it's hard to gauge like right now because it's just a whole different world. But the wedding market from January 1, 2019 to December 31st, 2019, pre-pandemic, all good time, we had 100, now this is just the CVB. The hotels get their leads too. We had 106 leads for just weddings and 6,454 room nights. The wedding market for January 1, 2020 to December 31st, 2020, and we didn't have March, April, May, June, July, all of that. We still had 67 leads and 3,647 room nights. And that was all impacted by the COVID pandemic. So then the wedding market right now from January 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2021, so we're looking at a half a year. So far we have 45 leads and 2,665 forecasted room nights. And so I wanted just to look at the weddings market. We have a system, it's a customized system that kind of keeps track of all weddings, all reunions, all corporate, all association. So I can pull this up and look at it anytime. So it's still big business here without us having a wedding venue, except not even really. The Country Club of the South doesn't do that much. Metropolitan does a little bit sometimes. Mansell does some smaller type weddings. So we're really getting the business from Little River Farms. We're getting it from Flint Hill. We're getting from the Manor. So we're getting it outside that they could pick anywhere to stay in a hotel. So if we can capture that person and we can start talking to them, we can get them in Alpharetta.
Councilman Bonner.
So, and then in your experience, so logistically speaking, okay, I've only been involved in one wedding really, but just siblings or anybody else, friends. But whenever you have a facility, there's always a wedding coordinator. Mm-hmm. So will we have to have a wedding coordinator, or is it good enough to know that, hey, you're just running this thing out like a gazebo?
Yeah, well, Morgan and I have talked about that because, we're both he's going to have the venue, and then we will sell it for someone to look at. They will have to book it, but then these vendors, they have to come in with their own table and chairs. They have to come in with their own decor and the dressing and everything. So we can take pictures and look, and we actually used Amber a little bit. Amber had done a lot of some weddings and things, so she really can show what the backdrops and stuff look like. But we talked about that, about how he would just have the venue setting. We would sell it and get the brides to look at it. That person would book, and then we would have to have all your guidelines and everything of here's what you can have on it, here's if you can have a tent on it, here's if you can do whatever. So he would do those guidelines. We would sell it, but those vendors actually supply all of it.
Okay. So I would like to add to that is that currently we don't have the bandwidth to be wedding planners. So what we were looking at this is to basically be the renters. We would rent the facility to either the bride or to a wedding planner, whoever came and wanted to do that. And then we give them a list of here's the things you can do, here's the things you can't do. You can't put tents in the ground that use stakes, here. So we'd make sure that we covered all the bases. Very similar to what we do with family reunions. We're in the family reunion business. We're just not family reunion planners. So we rent the picnic pavilions, or we rent rooms in our buildings, but we let them handle that. Be the same way.
I guess my concern is the family reunion leader is not similar to the bridal party or the parents of the bride. So dealing with that and those expectations there.
Yeah, and a lot of times when they do rent these, what happens if they go to like a Little River Farm, they actually rent the venue, And then they have to pay extra for the tables and chairs or or the food or the drinks or the catering and the linens. So they're used to paying all that. This would just have to be transported here instead of like Little River Farms, just got to pull it out of their inventory, their storage. But these vendors do this kind of stuff if you've got an open shelf or something. I mean, we think we'll get some business and stuff from it, and anything that'll help hotel, we'll say one hotel room is better than none. But again, I think the buzz and being able just even to talk about it would be good.
All right, and then my last question for Director Rogers, because I'm not going to let you get out of here without talking about what you know I want to talk about. What are the fans again?
Oh, the big fans?
The big fans.
The big
All right, but where is that a temporary fan, or is that going to be up on?
No, it would be mounted under the porch at the Art Center.
Okay.
So there'd probably actually be two of them.
Perfect.
We need those anyway for the ambience of the area, as well as when we're, assuming, whenever we can have events there, because we haven't been in a position where we can have outside events at the Art Center yet. But when we're having some performances, we want those fans there. So they would actually be under the cover and would be permanent.
All the improvements looked good in that you would have on your list anyways.
Absolutely.
But
absolutely.
I know the clientele in the arts center, and just want to make sure they know about those fans, so
Right.
they can talk to you about it.
Well, they would be artistic, big ass fans.
They got to be artistic.
Maybe they'd be big artistic fans, and then we could see.
Have you been to BurgerFi?
Yes.
Okay, look, that's one or two. I don't know how many they've got up there, but that's what they are. They're pretty cool.
Councilman Hypes?
Well, I'm certainly impressed by the marketing plan.
Thank you.
And I think the venues are what they are. And, I mentioned at the retreat, I have gone through this exercise very recently with my daughter being married, and you've got two audiences. You've got a bride and you've got a bride's family who's paying for that wedding. And I think we can market extensively, but at the end of the day, they've got to lay eyes on the venue and say, this is where I want my lifelong pictures to be for the wedding. And I'm skeptical of some of these venues for that purpose in terms of return on investment and whether the dollars spent on this venture, which expands our events, it's a little bit more in the event planning arena, a little bit. We're, marketing and leasing space, whereas in other areas we're sort of getting out of that business a little bit. And I know that there's other areas that we have either in the past tried to focus on, and I don't know if we still are or not, such as, Alpharetta being a live music center. So there's $71,500 here of improvements, some of which may be entirely dependent on making one of the four facilities wedding ready. Other of those dollars just may be needed regardless of whether weddings are held or not. I'm not sure. But, I would still like to see us spend our money on drawing people into the city where we get the biggest return on investment, have people spend time in the restaurants, hotels, et cetera. And I thought we had gone a long way pre-COVID with the music part of it. And I know it's been kicked around whether or not there would be a good return on investment by marketing and putting additional money into movie and film location shooting. But I don't want to be a naysayer, but I just have this feeling of skepticism about where we're going with this. So it's everything's worth a try. But when we start committing $71,500 to something, I guess I actually do have a objective question, and that is, has anybody taken prospective wedding parties to the 3 non-Mansell locations to get feedback? So this is sort of a we build it, they will come scenario.
So I would tell you, the folks that have looked at these spots and helped us with this were two folks that are in the wedding planning business. One of them being Amber, who does that, as well as Kim Zane, who in another life was a wedding planner. And so the ideas of what to do at those locations predominantly came from them, talking about the photographic opportunities and again, to use the word, the ambiance that you could create with the right kind of decorations that would be provided by
The perspective I'm seeking, though, is would the objective bride go there and say, I like what you've done with this is where I want my wedding, or is the Amber and/or wedding planner of the world saying, this is how you take a venue and make it as good as you can get, but that's not an answer to whether or not that gets us in the wedding business. And so I throw these things out. I have a healthy dose of skepticism, and I don't want to be raining on anybody's parade. You know, I would like it to be successful, but at the same time, if we commit that amount of money, is that the best place for the money, for the return on investment, where our goal might be not just to have weddings, but to get people into town and to experience town?
And as I mentioned, you know, we have a dedicated person that just goes to all the wedding shows, and she's strictly chasing all those brides. And she came from the Roswell Country Club, the Country Club of Roswell, so she's very familiar with things. So she likes the idea and everything, but we talked through the indoor and outdoor facility, because, you know, brides, these are outdoor, but there's some indoor components to it as we looked at each one of them, except for probably Rock Mill, but it has a covered pavilion. So if it was out here by the formal garden, they've got the community center. If it was at the art center, then they've got the art center. There's a Mansell House, they've got the Mansell House. The Rock Mill has a covered.
Well, again, you know, getting into the weeds a little bit, you show up for the wedding and you get a couple of choices. The bride shows up in the car fully dressed with her bridesmaids fully dressed, and there's no changing room, and then they're going to be, you know, off stage somewhere, and then you start your wedding. Or some of the more traditional places, let's say like in Roswell, you know, Primrose Cottage, Naylor Hall, whatever it might be, you know, they got changing rooms, and people come up and pre-wedding and then get ready, and brides and grooms are in different places. And, you know, Mansell House may facilitate that type of an environment. I'm not sure changing rooms, et cetera, at Rock Mill Park, I'm not sure how you're going to do that.
Yeah, that would be a tough one, but the community room here.
Well, I think one of the things that these venues are going to do, we're not talking about a traditional wedding. I mean, you know, one of the moves is away from the traditional church wedding and these are, you know, best way I can say it is kind of like hallmark kind of moments for weddings, where it's a little bit different, but you can make the area look like what you want to as a bride or as a bride party. So, you know, I think they are what, you know, the locations are what they are. It is just give us another, the possibility of doing something else. I would tell you that anything that we do to these sites are going to will become obviously the property of the city, and will enhance the property that we have. It's not like we're going to do something, and if we don't ever have a wedding, we didn't gain anything out of it. The venues themselves will be better. Will be a notch up. Not that they're bad now, because all of them are in good shape. It's just we're looking at that possibility.
So if we're in the wedding business and we're successful, and there's a number on the city website or ACVB site, how does who staffs all that to coordinate it? You know, here's your site, here's the available day, call this person to get your chairs, call this person to get your tent, make sure you got your trash cleanup. I mean, who's staffing?
So we're not doing that.
Right.
We're renting the space.
Okay.
So here's your space, and if you might say you might need to get a wedding planner, but this is your space, and we're going to make sure that it's clean and it's ready for you on your date from the times you have it.
And our staff,
we're really and truly not getting in the wedding planning business.
Well, I wouldn't want us to, but
we have a database of the cakes and the chairs and the tables and the linen. So we have all of those vendors that we would give the people to say, here's some people that you could call. Now, of course, they could call whomever they want based on your guidelines for how you can use the venue, but we have a list of all that already. Photographers, cake, wedding planners, you know, all of them. So they're already part of our wedding alliance that we've had for probably 10 years at least.
Well, anything we set our mind to, I hope we're successful, but,
Yeah,
you know.
me too.
Councilwoman Richard?
Thank you, Mayor. This actually to both of you. Morgan and I spoke earlier today about it, and I've been to weddings, and perhaps my experience is I really have a hard time seeing Rock Mill Park as a venue. No matter how much money we put in there, I think that's a big ask to me, to see the potential there, and seeing that, you know, we've got to invest almost 30 grand to even make it desirable gives me a lot of concern there. But I guess, Morgan, when you talk about, you know, we're in the family reunion business, and, you know, they call you and they just book the room or the pavilion, it's sort of a one-stop shop, that's all you guys do. I'm not sure we can use that same analogy in weddings, just because in today's environment, I mean, there's event planners and wedding planners, and there's so many other components to it that I think we might be oversimplifying it in your shop. I know it sounds like there's a significant amount of resources within the ACVB. You're already doing some of this, and you've got the marketing. It's sort of a well-oiled machine. But in regards to the Rex and Park component, I'm having a hard time really seeing this as just make the call, book the Mansell house, and then your group is done. And like Councilmember Hype said earlier, you know, we've just talked about outsourcing event planning for the Taste of Alpharetta and some other larger events. So I feel like we're kind of getting ourselves pulled back into an event planning type of environment. So I'm I guess skeptical at this point.
I think, you know, and as when we talked with the mayor, when we were kind of talking about it, I think like, and you can maybe help with this too, is that maybe some of these type of venues would be where you just have the ceremony, some beautiful ceremony, but you go to a conference center, or you go to the roof, something on the roof, that restaurant, whatever, for your reception and stuff like that. So that was kind of some thought too, if somebody just wanted to get married in. Also, even second and third marriages or something, places like that would probably be more, where they want to bring in a few family and friends or whatever, might even work in this atmosphere. I mean, you know, we haven't really had the venues except for the Mansell House, and they're very small, that they've had over there unless they put out a tent. So it's hard for us to gauge. We do know that they like the barns, and they like the unique, and they like the river, and they like all kinds of just funky stuff, and so and they get accommodated with it. So we don't know, like Art Center might be kind of very creative to have something if it was pretty. I can see what you're saying about Rock Mill, but we probably had 24 venues that we looked at that we could look at here and really try to get down to what could we really do that wouldn't cost an arm and a leg, but yet still be something picturesque, to be pretty, be something that we could make desirable and nice, to really drive the weddings to be here and into our hospitality industry. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
I love the idea. I think Alpharetta is perfectly suited for the wedding venue capital here in Northeast Georgia. We've got the hotels, we've got the tent and rental companies that you can buy from already located here. We've got restaurants galore that people will come to. It's a desirable shopping destination, and I don't care if it is a local wedding. I just flew out last year to a wedding at Arches National Park where my nephew got married. There was no place for the bride to get ready. She got out of the van, she had her gown on, she got ready at the hotel. I mean, it was a beautiful setting, and the photos were just gorgeous. Rock Mill is one of the most beautiful parks we have in the spring and summer. All the natural native plants are blooming. I mean, it's just, if you haven't seen it in the spring and summer, it's a gorgeous sight like it is. I think millennials look at weddings differently than some of us may have thought of them, and earlier, older folks around here may have thought of them earlier, because you have to have all those things. But whether you're looking at Old Edwards Inn, where I recently attended a wedding, they spent an absolute $1 million on the wedding, but they still had the reception in the fruit grove. And because people like that outdoors experience. And it's just, I think the three areas, I would put the art center last on the list of priorities, but and Rock Mill, I think could be, it's getting them off to a rocky start, but anyway. But the Mansell House has proven itself as a wedding venue. It does need to be updated, and the interior needs to be worked on. We've already got proven success, and Alpharetta suits itself to everything else about a wedding that they might need. So I'm all for it.
Councilman Burnett.
I want to thank the Pro Tem for tying Alpharetta Arches National Park and Old Edwards Inn into a single comparison, it takes a lot of talent. I sit in the council member Richard and Hype's camp. I think if you're going to do it, pick one, do it right. I've always told you I'll meet you halfway on anything, and this is living proof. So if it's something that, we can get our hands around, that being said, I don't know a lot about weddings, and I would like to keep it that way. Thank you.
Anyone else? So I'll just say, first of all, thank you for all the work you've put into this. I really appreciate it. I was the one that brought this forward to ask if it was a possibility. I didn't really have that vision or expertise. And so I know you work very closely with your staff, with Amber and people who are working in that realm as far as wedding planning, stuff like that. I think even before we knew that the occupancies are way down in our hotel, when I sat there and got some information from Director Harris last week, it was really stark. And it made it even more critical for us to do something, whether council agrees to do this or not. Just for those of you that weren't able to stay awake for the State of the City address that I did last week, I pointed out that Director Tom Harris in our finance department pulled some numbers together for me last week. And based on pre-COVID projections for the fiscal year budget prior to COVID in 2020, and then compared those to our projections for 2022 as he sees them now, our revenues are projected to be down by $8.3 million, okay? That's about 10% of the city of Alpharetta's revenue will be down based on the impacts of COVID in the short term. That was bad enough. That surprised me, but we've had those conversations. What really struck me was when you break it down by sales tax and property tax and things like that, out of that $8.3 million, $3.7 million of the projected losses of potential revenue are directly from the hotel motel tax. And so I do believe it is our most critical need, somehow, some way, to get people back into those hotels. And I know that Janet had provided some information, just the impact of Valentine's Day a couple of weeks ago. Janet, what was the occupancy?
We went up to 49%.
And we had been in the 38%. So you're talking about a 25%, something like that, increase just for Valentine's Day. So I understand some of the concerns from council, and hopefully we'll be able to figure out a way to do that. I do believe there's value in this. I believe we have some things that aren't being utilized to their full potential. I understand the concern about getting into the wedding planning business, but I mean, when we clearly give staff direction that you're just renting a pavilion, I mean, we don't get into the family reunion business, or there probably are people that rent some of our pavilions now and do weddings in them or something like that. I mean, if we simply tell them, look, we got a venue. If you want it, here's the lease. If you want a wedding planner, we don't do that. I mean, so they're having to do that anyway. I mean, people rent a pavilion in the middle of a farm in North Georgia. That farmer doesn't have a bunch of chairs in their barn, you know? So I don't know that that's really that much of a concern. We just draw a line and say that's not what we do. We don't give staff the authority to do it. I certainly understand the concern about Rock Mill if you're worried about just having indoor venues. But I do think that there's a niche now where people just want to do something they like to do and be in a setting that's comfortable. And we're not talking about, you know, a princess and a prince of England getting married. It's just people trying to have events nowadays are struggling, and it's expensive. I mean, rent out Country Club of the South. I'm glad I haven't had to worry about that kind of stuff. You're talking $60,000, $80,000, $100,000. And we do have the venues, the entertainment venues and things like that. But if somebody is going to rent a facility 40 miles away, the chances of them having the reception nearby and having local businesses from Alpharetta drive 40 minutes to provide those services are a lot slimmer. So I think there's value in the idea, and I hope we can figure out some way to make it make sense for the rest of council as well.
And the weddings have still been going, so they've been kind of sustainable, little bit of business that we've had coming here, and so are the sporting groups, so.
Right, and even in your numbers earlier, we're down to about 30%, 1/3 of where we were 2 years ago with weddings. Right. And so that's a big part of the $3.7 million that we're missing right now. Councilman Biden.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. We talked about it a lot on the retreat, and my biggest concerns were just the marketing costs, putting our staff in the business of something that we're really trying to get out of in events. And it seems like you've taken care of those answers. So again, the 75,000 as a previous liaison to parks, those are things on this checklist that he probably would have had on the checklist and that we talk about maintaining. So just for clarity, and then hopefully kicking this ball out of our court, if you want to move forward with this, I say move forward with it. I don't think we need to hear it anymore for 75,000. I want us to focus on, it's kind of like my thing on the turf. So we got to get focused on the bigger strategic ones. I think it's worth a try, and you've kind of taken away the risk of increasing the time of staff and then getting us not in the business, because you're talking about before adding marketing dollars towards this, which is a no-go for me. So I'm good for you moving forward, but I don't think we need to be seeing this as a council if it's below this amount, or we can keep going on it. I think there's bigger and better things that we can be spending some time on. So, but thank you for alleviating my concerns from a few weeks ago.
And so just to wrap up this workshop, for those of you that, we're not voting on this tonight. This isn't a business item or anything like this. We can't have meetings of 7 of us to just sit behind closed doors and talk about things like this, because we're stewards of public money. So this is just for us to have these conversations, have them publicly, so the public knows what we're talking about. My suggestion to wrap this up is I'll continue to talk to those of you who have concerns and see if there's ways that we can tweak the proposal to address those concerns. And once we feel like we've come close enough, maybe bring it forward as a business item and see if there's something, and then we'll vote on it and publicly one way or another. So, everybody okay with that? All right. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. So next up is the preliminary list of parks projects for possible bond issue. Director Rogers, you still have the floor.
I'll stay up here. In the packet that was given out this week, I'll apologize for one mistake I made, because the two items, the ones that was there before and the one that I put in the new packet, they look a lot alike. and I should have done a little bit better job of showing you what I had done differently. So the one that the one that is up on the board now reflects $29,500,000 possible bond referendum items. That's up $1 million from the one that I did last week, and I'll tell you what the major differences were. We added, based on the conversation from council, we added Brookside Park at $2 million, and that's for phase 1 for the connection and the bridge. We added Waters Road Park, design and build out. Those were the two that we added. We added $4 million there, and we reduced the Wills Park master plan by $1 million from $5 million to $4 million. And then we took parkland acquisition, which was originally had money for the Alpha Loop and for parkland, two separate items. We combined those and reduced that total from 8 to 6 to get to our the 29.5. So one of the discussions last week was talking about what we were spending on the east side versus what we were spending on the west side. And so I'll tell you that those two numbers are a little bit closer. Now with the west side projects under this plan, we're spending $13,500,000. That includes the $5 million for the equestrian center that the foundation is going to match with $5 million. And then on the east side projects, we're at $10 million. So that's kind of where we're at now. And you can see now from the map that is on the screen, when we add the Waters Road Park and the Brookside Park, it kind of evens things out a little bit on the screen on the east side, the west side. So that was the primary differences of those that we had last week. So be glad to answer any questions that you may have at this point in time.
Questions from council? Councilman Hypes?
It's all just a matter of priorities and, looking at the updated list here, I'm mostly satisfied with the list. I'm not as happy maybe with the allocation that's within the list. My preference would be if we put out a list of items that we ultimately agree upon for a bond, for Parks bond, that some money be spelled out as a bullet point for the Alpha Loop, because I think it has broad appeal across many parts of Alpharetta. And certainly some of these parks are going to have appeal to people who live close to those parks, but I think so right now, parkland acquisition is $6 million. If some meaningful amount was a separate bullet point for Alpha Loop, I think that would make me happier in terms of what our intentions are to take to the public and what would be appealing to the public. I personally believe that $3 million, in terms of the internal allocation, $3 million for the farmhouse versus the allocation for, say, the Wills Park Master Plan or the Alpha Loop. Again, I think those are big general projects for the city as a whole. I think farmhouse, while it's an important project, is going to have a narrower appeal and usage. So those are my two comments. I'd like to see, I like the list with the addition of the Alpha Loop specified, and I'd like to see a little bit of a reallocation internally.
Councilwoman Richard?
Thank you, Mayor. Morgan, in regards to the Wills Park Master Plan projects, it's been a while since I've looked at the master plan for Wills Park. What does $4 million, does that give us all of the upgrades and enhancements the plan is calling for?
It gives us the majority of them. With the $4 million, we would anticipate being able to do the two gateways at both ends of the park, which is one at the corner of Roswell Road and Old Milton, and the other at Old Milton and Wills, so that it announces that this is Alpharetta's premier park that you've arrived at. And then it would also finish the spine project, which is a major portion of the plan, which connects the two gateway entrances of the park, and as well as upgrading like all of the fencing within that corridor and refurbishing the dog park. Those are the main aspects of the $4 million. And we had 5, and the reason I don't want anybody to think, well, that we just tossed out $1 million without thinking about it. But we have done a good bit of improvements from that master plan. One of the big things that we did was we were able to get the pavilion moved.
Right.
And that's, you know, in the open market, that's about probably $350,000 or $400,000 pavilion there. So we feel like we were able to trim that budget down with what we have done and what we're doing. And then the $4 million will give us and rework, I'm sorry, within that $4 million, rework that parking lot at Wacky World. Because that's a big part too.
Okay.
Parking is an issue at Wills Park. If you've ever been on certain days or certain times, parking is a real problem. And we feel like by reworking that parking lot and where it flows into the parking lot where the pool is a little bit better, that we can increase the number of parking spaces as well as the flowability of that space.
Okay, thank you. And then the farmhouse, the design and build out. So we currently don't have any design plans for the farmhouse?
No, we do not.
Okay.
But the way we came about the 3 million versus all the other at 2 is all the other ones are most of them are smaller parks. They're not as challenging as the
topography.
The topography. Thank you. I'm just having problems with certain words, and also the historical aspect of that causes us to allocate a little bit more to that to get that park.
It's more challenging?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilman Binder, and then I'll work my way down the right.
One question, and maybe what I would like to see, kind of going in the opposite direction of Councilmember Hives on the last item for the parkland acquisition. Just from the last bond that we had, we were pretty focused on just land purchases, and then there was a couple of things. Well, how do we develop it afterwards once we purchase it? But also maybe seeing some of the areas that we want to start focusing on for redevelopment. It may not be land purchases that we're doing, but maybe working with current development to say, can we lease part of that land to make it a soccer field or make it a passive park for some of Kathy's conceptual plans, getting that done. So maybe just working with Mr. Thomas of saying, how can we make it so we can activate new parks? Maybe we're not, it's a more of a long-term lease instead of a land purchase on that one. And how much we spent on the loop right now? I think that might be more of a public works question or a Tom question.
Yes, I would agree with you that it's either a Tom or a Pete question.
I still help you out with the backup on not the.
Did I just hear a bus rolling over somebody's back?
Just give me a rough number.
Yeah.
Let's count the land too. Let's just, how much have we spent? Just
over close to 2 count the design.
What's that?
Approximately 2 million, and that includes design
For the loop?
so far.
And then we have it on T-Splosh for coming up? For how much?
9.25
million.
9.25 million.
So I think the loop's done pretty well for itself. And we've done a very good job with the loop of getting it through easements and working efficiently on that. But I hear it. I think it's time to move on. If we're going to put special focus in areas, it might be the ones like North Point that we got to just really hone in on.
Councilman Burnett?
Thank you. I would, as opposed to get into the list, which there's nothing on here that I have a fundamental disagreement with. I think both of you are right. I think the publicity that you get from putting the Alpha Loop on the bond is probably a net positive. But I would like to see if there is an agreed upon number the next time we do this, that if we can talk to finance, we can talk to Morgan to see if it's 30, 29, whatever it is, and work backwards from there. I think we can have a better conversation when we agree on the dollar figure. But that being said, this is great. If this was the list that we finished up with the addition of the loop, I mean, I'd start your resolutions tomorrow. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you, Morgan. I think it's a fine job. I don't disagree with what Councilmember Burnett just said about some of the loop being on this as well. It's specifically spelled out. I'm glad Farmhouse is on there. I think our senior community has been rallying for this for quite some time, and I think it's a drop in the bucket to finally address that. I remember this entire chamber and the lobby being filled with people who wanted to move forward with that, so I'm glad that's gotten some attention. And I'm also glad Brookside Park at $2 million is on there. I hope I hope the whole office community around there will adjust and accept it and allow parking variances and get on board with us, just like the Equestrian Center. The community has gotten on board with us. So hopefully we can do that with Brookside Park, because I think that is a beautiful area that needs to be enhanced. And so good job with this list.
Thank you.
So one of the things that had concerned me before was the geographic distribution of these funds, and it still bothers me. You know, if you look, I'll go back to the numbers. We're spending $9 million in Wills Park, which is clearly a city park, and it's our major park, but it's not all that accessible, especially unless you jump in a car if you're on the east side of Georgia 400. And then you've got Milton Avenue design build out, Old Rucker design build out, and the 6 point, this parkland acquisition. So when I look at the map, and I know we've expanded and included Brookside Park and Waters Road Park, and I think that's good. My concern is that one of our primary areas of concern, that North Point corridor, as Councilman Binder referred to, there's nothing being done there. And we got a workshop later about potential, projects in that corridor or something like that. I think we still need to do some work to figure out how we can equitably spread that money to help some of the concerned areas on the east side of Georgia 400. I think we've got a tremendous amount of momentum, and we've spent a tremendous amount of money creating that momentum. I believe the city's bonded over $100 million since I've been on council, and most of that money was directly spent in creating downtown, creating this environment, doing Rucker Road, that whole project, and buying all of those park spaces on the west side of town. And I do want us to take some steps in making those improvements. And so I'm not willing to sit here and say, okay, I'll take this from that and that from this. But I think as a council, we need to figure out, okay, we can only do so many things. How do we do this money and have the biggest bang for the buck in making the whole city moving forward attractive and accessible to park spaces and trails and things like that? So I do want us to go back and sharpen our pencils a little bit. Maybe we take some of that parkland acquisition and specify that a certain amount of that needs to be spent in the North Point corridor, and either improvements or land acquisitions that can complement the redevelopments. We had a previous owner of North Point Mall had intended to build a water park around their water detention pond there on North Point Parkway or something like that. I mean, I really would like to see us carve out some of the money that's identified right now, and identify some ways to make a big impact through that North Point corridor. So that's just, in general, that's my feedback. I don't object to the Alpha Loop. If we carve it out of something else, on the west side of town. If we want to set $2 million for that, then I'm fine with that. We've all got to realize, though, that we're designating $9.2 million, I believe it was, for T-Splosh money towards Alpha Loop. So $2 million, we're already doubling our investment, and with the 9 out of T-Splosh that would be designated, that's a long way. And I don't know that that's necessary. Maybe we can drop the T-Splosh number down by $2 million and bond $2 million. It's something like that, and designate maybe that T-Splosh money for investment along the North Point corridor. So in general, once again, I know you got more needs than you do money, even with all this, and I appreciate the effort, but I hate not to see us doing something now, because if a bond passes, that's money we don't have to wait for collections on T-Splosh and stuff to do. So my suggestion would be, let's go back and look at, okay, how can we make more investments on that North Point corridor? Farmhouse, do you know how much the design would cost?
No.
I just have a hard time with building that one right now as a priority. I don't mind doing the design and seeing what that design would cost and maybe taking a bite at that one later. Because I do think we want to do it. We just have so many other things when you've got so many other parks that are walkable from neighborhoods, walkable from schools, having a major impact on office developments in the North Point corridor and things like that. I'm having a hard time with the build out, because I think the build out should be $2.5 million, mostly to get people down that slope, wheelchair accessible, and I have a hard time with that one too. But that's my feedback. Councilman Hypes.
Yeah, in terms of if the number remains static and it gets into just allocating amounts within the list, I also believe that Stormwater Park at North Point is a key integral part of what we have planned over there, and it deserves a bullet point on here. What we do with that bullet point, I'm not clear, but it's a key part of our plan right there behind the La Quinta. And when whatever gets done over there, it's an amenity, and if we make it an amenity, it helps get things done over there. So I think in terms of parks, that I'm supportive of making sure that that's included in here somewhere.
Any other feedback at this point? Councilman Merkel?
Never want to be left out. Yes, I think it needs to be a living document that continues to get discussed, and we're going to go into the next conversation talking about accessibility of the Greenway with the Encore connection, that, we really need to focus on the ones that are going to have the biggest impact on the most people in this community. And I think, I'm not trying to beat up on the farmhouse. I do want it. That's a lot of money that really, like you said, design would be good. We don't have a design. And we got to be careful. You get to 30 million, all of a sudden you're like, oh, what's 31? 31, you're at 32, 30, throw another million at 34, Eventually you're talking about big money, right? So I want to be conscious of that. And we also, as mentioned, we're going to need Director Harris to come up here and tell us what we can afford. So there's a lot of factors in here. What we can afford, what can we sell, because obviously it's going to be voted on by the citizens of Alpharetta. The list is going to have to be legitimate, appealing, and fiscally conservative in my mind. Thank you.
All right. We're getting closer, man.
Yeah, we are.
Baby steps. But and just in all fairness, this is a big deal, and it's something we need to do very thoughtfully, because doing a bond issue is not something we take lightly as council members or as a community. And so we need to have our best project list that we can present to the public and hope that it's worthwhile for them. So I appreciate it, and we'll continue to work at it and have conversation amongst council about where we can adjust it accordingly.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So the next workshop is the Encore Greenway Extension Part. Director Regas.
And Mayor and Council, I'll be joined up here by Kathy Cook, Pizza Savage, and then Morgan. Kathy will talk first about why we're here before you tonight. It has to do, I believe, with the Alpha Link, which links the west side of town to the east side of town. And Kathy, take it away.
Thank you, Bob. This is just kind of a recap of where this idea came from. Of course, we went from 2018 to 2019. We went through the North Point Placemaking Plan. We had many different public meetings. We had a lot of public input. And what we found, of course, is that we need to build value. We need to make sure that we have something unique, something that is, stabilizes it economically. And we also needed to just build on the assets that we have, which is the Big Creek Greenway. And then, of course, the council approved the Alpha Loop that would go into that area. And then lastly, of course, building for the people, listening to the people and their input of what value we should add to North Point. And of course, one of those, the value that came out of that study is the Gateway Park. And the Gateway Park, which is the connection over to Big Creek and the Greenway, we also included Greenway monuments. There was just different seating areas that would be located along the Big Creek, and just to remind you what that was, some of the examples they showed. We're using recycled material for the small sitting areas right when you get to Big Creek, but trying to really build on that theme. And here's some pictures of what that looks like. So they had showed that at the connection so that you would have just building on the eco-district, making sure that we have these different places to stop, rest, relax, learn, and socialize. Some of the other things that we talked about during those meetings was is the importance of having a focal point. So some of the parks that we looked at and we talked about during that time was in Greenville. And one of the parks that you'll see here, which is the Cancer Survivors Park, what we liked about this is it had some overlooks, even if we create a trail, if it's just a trail connection because of the topography from Encore over to Big Creek Greenway. You still have overlooks. You can also still have quite an impact along the roadway because we're not building for now what's out there. We're building for the future, and we've seen what the density and the future density, the LCI, is showing us. So going to have a lot of people there. They need places to gather as well as office workers. So that is why we are here and part of that background. And I don't know if we were going to go over recommended pricing or next steps.
Yeah, people talk about 3 proposals that we have received from AECom. And how we would like the week to unfold would be Wednesday, we would actually go to the site to walk the site, to see what it's about. Then next Monday, if y'all like what you see and like what you hear tonight from Pete about one of the plans, we would bring one of those forward for y'all's approval to on the design of the extension.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay.
All right, so a couple weeks ago, Morgan and I were tasked, Kathy had a previous engagement, but basically to get a Greenway connection from the intersection of Encore to the Greenway, and this is our connection point right there. It's about a 20-plus foot grade change with another challenge of the green line you see in the middle of the page is a 5-foot, 6-foot wide nature trail. Bicyclists are not permitted on that trail at all. It is strictly gravel and mulch, and it's kept up very well. And so we got with AECom to give us a proposal for just the connection. 12-foot wide raised concrete boardwalk. That came in around $372,000. Brought Kathy in the loop, and she goes, hey, Gateway, what happened? Went back to AECom, brought them back in, and make sure I get my dollar amount right here. They were at $625,000, but they brought up a good point to us. They didn't know, they gave us a price, but they didn't know what the Gateway was yet. There were no official design concepts for them to work off of. So we went back, and for $460,000, they came to us and said, we could design the Greenway connection, the raised trail, plus provide 3 concepts of gateways, amenities, with associated construction cost estimates as well. And that's the big component of the cost, is they're actually going to give us good construction costs over the next 3 months if we decide to move forward with the project. So we'll have ideas to go through. We'll be more workshops, but basically they're looking at about a 12-month schedule from start of the project to when they submit for U.S. Army Corps permits. Because everything out there, after you get off the roadway, is either floodplain or wetlands. And it was quite saturated earlier this week, which we didn't even have much rain, to be honest with you. So the exhibit or the picture that Kathy showed about the raised trail, wooden trail and all that, was quite relevant given the standing water that we saw out there in the wetlands, as well as I think there's at least 2 or 3 creeks that we have out there that Morgan has showed us. So it is a connectivity challenge, but AECom is very well in tune with U.S. Army Corps, what they require, and I'm confident they can move forward and give us a great product.
So just to clarify, you're talking about $462,000 just to do plans?
$462,000 will give us a formal permitted design of the trail and 3 conceptual costs or plans with cost estimates to build it. If council has a plan they like and they want to move forward with a concept, there's time in that schedule to add that cost to design it out.
And I think, Pete, was the Alpha Loop about 600,000, a little over 600,000, the section that it cost to design at Northwinds? Trying to think about something similar, had some raised sections.
Alpha Loop between Avalon and City Center?
No, it was the section behind
Northwinds.
Brookdale at Northwinds. We're in the
$9.25 million section.
But it was
That was a long section, wasn't it?
Yeah, it also included a tunnel too.
Right.
Yeah.
And it had a lot of on-grade sections and some raised. It was half and half.
And the only reason I ask is because I can't tell the exact distance here, but it cost $1 million to build the Alpha Loop from Avalon to City Center.
About 1,400 linear feet is our current estimate to connect. Granted, we don't know if we're going to zig and zag along the way to stay away from some nice specimen trees that are out there or go towards a water feature or not. So that part hasn't been fully determined. It is different than the plan that Kathy presented earlier, the placemaking, in the sense that it was connecting to the parking lot instead, and Morgan, the director of fund, basically we need to tie it to the Greenway. So we trust him there.
And also, too, I mean...
Any input from council?
Gotcha.
Section in red, I'm not following this.
Section in red is the existing Greenway.
Right.
Section in green is an existing nature trail.
Mm-hmm.
That nature trail is foot traffic only. So, and actually there is actually a creek crossing along the nature trail as well. So what we got to do is build a greenway, build a raised greenway from the intersection of Encore, traverse over the existing green line. So basically coming from here,
okay,
down here,
got it,
over the green line, and then tie into that point right there.
All right. I better.
Once we get over the first nature trail, we could dive into at grade as quickly as we can.
So with the existing greenway connection to the north or east of the old Ethan Allen, that's what it is, right? Ethan Allen?
Yeah, it was. That's here.
I know the idea has always been to bring the greenway through here and open it up So North Point, it opens up back to the Greenway, but that's an awfully expensive parallel section to the section that already exists. Am I missing something?
The section I think you're referring to is this section that's already existing?
Correct. And then you're coming down, and I mean, I've ridden my bike on that, 24 times. But so what we're talking about is $500,000 to design something that comes down, and then the construction costs, and it parallels something that's about 300 yards to the east.
Yes.
Okay.
Councilman Burnett?
I don't know. I love the point he just made because he tied in. I was going to ask how far it was from one from another.
About 3 football fields, I'd guess. More, less?
I just don't know that there's the payoff. If you're talking about that kind of money for conceptual. I get, hey, look, nice things cost money. I'll be the first person to tell you that, but I don't know that that's where I'm going to start. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilwoman Richard?
I agree with the comments about the expense. And it's really deceiving to see this in that kind of a cryptic photograph there. I think I would ask, I know Bob has offered to take folks out on Wednesday to do a little site visit. I would ask that you do that and then come back and discuss this, because I think it really is helpful to actually physically be there and see the opportunities. And I think the gateway, connecting that at that location for the Alpha Loop and the Greenway, and yes, I think it appears expensive from the bids that we've gotten back from AECom, but I think that there's a lot of potential here, and it's very difficult to see it in what we're looking at here. So I would just ask folks to take a site visit out there and come back and have a discussion about it.
And for clarity, $372,000 is a formal design cost to go from Encore Parkway directly to the ground. It's full civils, permit from the U.S. Army Corps, ready to bid the project out. The additional $90,000 is preparing 3 concepts, in-depth concepts of the gateway feature and cost estimates.
Councilman Hines?
I've always liked the idea of opening this up on the south side of North Point Parkway. And so if we end up, and we have that land, we can open it up down to the 5-foot wide nature trail. Is it a viable option to connect down to the 5-foot wide nature trail, but then to build over and connect? Because people are out to exercise and be in nature. I mean, the shortest distance is not necessarily the whole purpose of a greenway anyway.
I think it's going to be a challenge to get down there that fast to meet ADA compliance, depending on what type of gateway feature you have, like a park, like if there's a gathering center right at the intersection of Encore. Because right after you get off the sidewalk, there's a guardrail, and then it just drops. And to meet ADA requirements, it could be a challenge to get down there that fast before you hit the green line.
And I think the concepts would look at
Correct.
3 different concepts to see what it could be.
Councilman Merkel?
Certainly not my area of expertise when it comes to ADA, but if that greenway is ADA accessible from another point nearby, does every access have to be ADA?
It's not ADA.
If I go to Haynes Bridge and get on the greenway there, that's not ADA?
The sidewalk down here, the way that S-curve works is greater than 5%.
What I'm saying is if I drive down to the Haynes Bridge parking lot and park and get out, I'm on the same greenway.
Correct.
And I've accessed it if it's ADA.
Yes. Yes.
So my question is, do we have to make this ADA?
Reasonable
Compliant.
accommodation, I
Reason-
think is what.
Yes.
But aren't they reasonably
Doing-
accommodated with the parking lot at Haynes Bridge and they can roll right onto it?
It's,
Right.
for a trail, reasonable accommodations.
So maybe
Until
this
you-
is an entrance that's different.
With the caveat, until you receive federal funds. Just,
Just a question.
Yep.
Anyways.
And we did apply for $150,000 for concept plan money. We won't know until the 1st of April if we're successful with that. And that was actually the National Endowment for the Arts was offering concept plans that would include art as part of it. So we won't know until April 1st. But it's our understanding from looking that if we were successful, we could put that towards the concept portion of the bid.
Any other feedback from Councilman Biden?
So, looking at the conceptual plans that we've done to date on North Point, what other areas do you think we could take a stab at? I'm asking this because, again, I've talked about conceptual plans and placemaking plans, and I'm just ready to get us towards a project. Is there anything else that we could be looking at? In that map that you first showed, or would this be the one to put the flag in the ground?
I think this is it. As long as it's visible and it's not just a trail connection, that it's something that really has a lot of impact here as we do, the different road grids and set all of that up. I think if you're looking for a park, something to put funds toward park-wise, I think it's here. This is your intersection. This is where the Alpha Loop, and to be able to have that direct connection, I think is a pretty big impact.
And then, I know it's hard to ask for a swag number before you get AECOM, but what would we be looking at for construction? So you already, and I'm glad you clarified, so that 375 or so, that's for, at the end of the day, construction documents and permits ready to go. So this is not another conceptual plan, or just that other 100,000 or so would be for the gateway focal entrance.
Yep.
But how much would it be to build out the trail?
I'm hoping around $1,200 a linear foot. Where that number comes from is the greenway that we're building right now is approximately $875 a linear foot, but it does have some raised sections, but very short raised sections. But it does have a tunnel. It does have a pedestrian bridge. The raised sections coming off Encore would be the biggest expense. So we're thinking around $1,200 a linear foot.
Okay. And so
about $2 million.
At $2 million, relatively speaking, probably a lot less than other options we've looked at involving real estate. So I hear what everyone's saying in there. Just a comment. My hope is I want to get us to action because North Point is dropping, and I know everyone does too. So we got to start attacking the conceptual and the comprehensive plans to say what can we start doing and make work. And I'm happy to work with council on anything, but I thought this would be a good start to at least get the ball rolling on it. And thanks to Pete and Kathy and Bob and Morgan to kind of get an efficient plan going to see how we can reduce the planning costs between more conceptuals and turning that into engineering drawings.
I got a question for you, Pete.
Yes, sir.
How much we spend on AECOM this year?
Well, this year I can tell you it's easy. It's I don't think we spent any money this year.
Okay.
But they were the major project they received in the last 2 years was the Kimmel Bridge Road widening that we did a couple years ago, and then the current Old Milton Parkway project.
So we got them on that. They're not on McGinnis Ferry?
No. They're that
How
is,
much do you think we're spending on managing those two projects? And the design and everything they're doing?
Kimmel Bridge Road was done in-house, so that was nice there. That good news there. And it's being construction. It's being monitored in-house as well. I think the all-in design fee for Old Mill Parkway is around $2 million.
And the reason I bring that up is because we've had conversations about, trying to look for efficiencies and stuff like that. And I look at this list of all these bond projects. And I look at this park and all the parks that we've acquired land for, and I'm looking at all the zeros behind the numbers of paying consultants to do all of these. Is there some point where we need to step back and say, maybe we need to hire a couple of people because we're spending 1.6 or whatever $1 million a year on consultants or something like that, or contract? Help me here. I mean, there seems to be no end to the amount that we pay for consultants to do all these things.
And we started looking into that. So Old Mill Parkway, as well as North Point Parkway, that Kathy seems like are federally funded projects. Making sure we dot our I's and cross our T's. We want to have somebody who has gone through the process numerous times. So that's why we brought in Atkins to help us out there. No one wants to give money back, so they're going to make sure that we don't give money back. Cumming Street, we just started going from the retreat, got a proposal for surveying, get that ball rolling. We heard loud and clear that it's more of a sidewalk-esque project. There is some beautification along the corridor, adding left turn lanes to help us out as well. We're going to design that in-house. We've got 2 engineers in-house. We're going to take care of that and try and minimize the design costs there. So we're handling a lot of those smaller ones in-house. When it comes to the T-Splosh projects, it all depends on what we have currently in the queue internally, if we can handle more, as well as what type of project we're talking about. This project, the Encore Greenway connection, is structurally, it's a structural project. It's a structural engineering project. So bringing somebody in to do that wouldn't be worth our good return on investment. So it's primarily the structural engineers and then the landscape architects struggling with the structural engineers to make things look good and make it a park-like setting. So we've started looking at that already. Morgan and I have already been in some talks as well for how do we handle these bond projects coming up. We've got a small game plan depending on what comes through. A lot of it ties into T-Splosh 2, to be honest with you. If T-Splosh 2 passes, then what type of projects can we take on? Mid-block crosswalks, pedestrian improvements, we could take those on in-house. Do we need a consultant to manage those? No, we can handle all that in-house. It's the larger projects. The Alpha Loop, depending on what's going on with the Alpha Loop, we may need to contract a portion of that out and take the rest of it on ourselves. We don't build many tunnels. So we wanted a firm who knows how to build, who oversee the tunnel construction. So that's where Atkins helped us out on the Greenway project. So we're finding out what we're really good at and taking care of those, and then contracting out what we need assistance with.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear y'all are already looking into that, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now, but we are racking up a lot of external fees, and if we can figure out some way to cut that number by 10%, that's real money.
Yep.
So we'll continue to keep pecking at that. Was there any other feedback at this point? I mean, I'll certainly try to make it Wednesday to take a look. I drove through there last week, but it was raining, so no, not down there. Yeah, nice and wet. But
Councilman Binder, if I just can mention real quick, you know, something simple that could be done out there. It's going to be years before we actually have the crosswalks where they're the new crosswalks like this, but maybe it's working with the Arts Commission to try to get them to do a painting project using the new logo. So it's kind of a way to say something's coming, something's changing, and it is something that would stay in place for a couple of years, and I think it's relatively a cheaper project. You can do the same thing at Mansell. There's existing crosswalks where they take it and come up with a branding and painting.
I'm just curious, when you talk about having some kind of gateway feature, do we have a design for that?
We don't have a design. We've got a lot of examples of what it could be.
Yeah, well, I'm not talking about this per se. I'm talking about the actual, because, you know, in the early concepts, they had these funky-looking arches or something like that. Maybe we could spend some money on figuring out what that's going to look like if we're going to do those. And maybe we put one at each end of North Point at Haynesbridge and Mansell, and one over the entrance to this, whatever you're entering into when we decide how it's designed, but maybe do something like that. That's a visual impact, that you're in a place that's different.
And that's a great point. We actually had, when the CID was looking for projects to put on their list, we had asked them to include these, which are the gateway features at Haynesbridge and North Point. We actually have land that was set aside from the developer at that corner, but they didn't include it. That wasn't one of their priorities. They had a lot of different things they were looking at, but that's the tower feature that was supposed to be installed at the corner of Haynes and North Point. So that's a possibility, or something to look at.
I know you've got a lot on your plate, but I would recommend let's go ahead and establish what that's going to be. Yeah, and so then we can start incorporating those features and that design into whatever we're doing along there.
Absolutely.
Anything else from council? All right.
Oh, Councilman.
Councilman Binder, I'm sorry.
Oh, Bob or Pete was going to mention just partnering also on interests of, we've had everywhere from ARC helping with designs and CIDs and so have you gauged any interest? Have conversations?
February board meeting, the CID had a list of projects that their staff had compiled. This Greenway connection was one of them. What does that mean? I'm sure there could be some interest, but it was not. It was on their radar.
Anything else? Thank y'all. I appreciate it. We're getting there. Once again, baby steps. So the next and final workshop will be on city manager and city administrator, the difference in explanation of those positions. City administrator, Bob Regas, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor. Mayor and council, last Tuesday morning, Councilman Burnett wrote us and asked me, looks like 5 questions. And so I was going to try my best to answer them tonight. The first one was the differences between a city manager and city administrator. And they're really, in the public administration world, the city council world, there's 2 main forms of government. One's considered or called the council manager form, and that's where the council hires a manager. The manager really runs the day-to-day operations, appoints department heads, submits a budget. And in some communities, the communication between the council and the manager or the manager's staff, the department heads, is very, very limited. Okay. The other form is what we have here, and it's a mayor-council form, where the mayor is the CEO, and that's in our charter, and the mayor and the council appoint a city administrator, and our duties and responsibilities are laid out in the charter of the city. We both have, the charter says about both of us that we, the mayor more that he employs, he hires employees, he terminates employees with the consent of the council. The administrator is more day-to-day operations, directing city employees, that kind of thing. There's also one that I think the last item of the administrator is that he does or she does anything else that the mayor and council ask him or her to do. So it's a catch-all. So if there are no questions about that, I'll move to the second question.
Any questions at this point? So I've got one just right offhand. So if I understand you right, in a city manager, the council does not vote on directors' appointments. That's a hire by the manager.
in a pure council manager form, Mayor, that's the way it works. Now, I talked about two ends of the spectrum, and most everybody is somewhere on that spectrum. Okay? But there are some pure forms where the manager would not bring those things to the mayor and council. In my past life, I did not do that. It was my responsibility in the charter, and I had to do it. You know?
Okay, no, I just wanted to clarify, when you mentioned it, I wasn't sure how that worked.
Yeah.
Okay.
The second question was how it relates to matters of personnel, day-to-day operations, differing functions. And I think I touched on that some with how the two different ways work. You know, the city manager or administrator is the full-time person who runs the day-to-day operations. That's in either one. So I think, again, the hiring of department heads is what is going to separate those two a little bit as far as functions. The third question was soliciting feedback from those who have worked in both city manager, city administrator forms of government. You know, I've done that. I've not spoken to others yet who have done that. You know, but I've been reading a lot of charters and getting deep into all, you know, what the differences are. And I'll be happy to jump more into that. The last one was upon my retirement, would like to make sure that we have the best talent pool we can find. And if we, as a council, need to make changes to make the CEO role more attractive, then we should consider that. And that's an interesting question, right? I know that I think young professionals in this profession, they look at city manager and city administrator, and most will read charters of the organization they're going to, just to make sure there's clarity as to what the functions and roles are. And that's a healthy thing, you know, for both bodies, you know.
Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked for this because if there are certain things that need to be, Bob's all I've ever known, but I think if there are people who sit around for a while, in fact, I don't know a single city council member in Alpharetta that ever had a different city administrator, you know, with the exception of probably now Representative Chuck Martin. There may be another here or there, but by and large, everybody here, and it's worked. But I do think that it's a really healthy opportunity with 2 legislative cycles to take a deep dive into our charter and look at the roles and responsibilities and see if we operate outside of that because of a comfort factor, and if there are things that we need to do to make that job more attractive in a charter if somebody's going to read it. Because if you're going to weed out 5 or 10% of a talent pool based on what they just write when a nationwide search recruiter does, 5% year over year over year, or you get into exponential returns. And I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to market and advertise that job, because Alpharetta has changed immensely in 22 years. And I think that there are known knowns and there are unknown unknowns. And we should go into the next season of our city's history with our eyes wide open, because if you hired somebody that had a fundamental understanding and then made the point to point at the charter and say that, Like, guys, there's liberties that we're not going to necessarily be able to have, and I don't know what all those things are. I'm grateful to have sat and, there's one director here that I've sat through here and interviewed, but I don't know anything about human resources, and I really don't know anything about government human resources. And I think that there are opportunities to look and see what we can make better, and I would like to ask and find the support among council. It's easy to point to a neighboring city and say they do something one way, and this is why it's a grease fire. And it's easy to look at a city that has our same form of government with a council that doesn't get along and has all the same things. But you have to govern based on a document. And I think to make that in a living, breathing thing in a conversation, I think that the opportunity that we're going to have in the next year and a half is a really healthy one to do that, because I think that if we all read through that charter with our magnifying glass, we would all be like, do we do that? And I think that that is, it's an extensive document.
I know I do.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to it. And that was why I asked, and, I welcome anybody else's feedback on things that they want to see, but I think we owe it to the people who live here. It'd be a tremendous accomplishment if the 7 of us found the next person who was going to spend 22 years here, because it probably doesn't happen a lot. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Councilwoman Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, and I'm thankful that you had brought this forward as a workshop. It's been, Bob and I have had discussions probably since the beginning of the year, knowing that we as a council were going to be moving forward with looking at replacing someone who's done a phenomenal job for 22 years. From my perspective, knowing that so many of our North Fulton neighbors have a different structure, I thought it was worthy for us to assess the situation. So I don't know, I know what works here, and I'm very grateful that it works here, but I think we need to go into searching for Bob's replacement with our eyes wide open and really assess, have the opportunity to assess the current structure and make a conscious decision that that's something we want to continue, or make the decision that we may want to look at making some changes to it. So, what you shared today I think is interesting. I still don't have enough information to say I'm interested in staying the same or I'm interested in changing it, but I think it's a worthy discussion and deserves some attention. Thank you.
Councilman Hypes.
I agree that I think it's a good discussion to, periodically as the city grows and evolves to, look at our charter/constitution and to see how we're doing things. As we do it, I mean, why I think it's so monumental of a thing is this is procedure. This isn't substance. So when we vote on an ordinance, when we vote on a law or a zoning decision, we're voting on substance, and then we're done with that one, we go to the next one. But talking about changing our Constitution, basically, it impacts every substantive decision that follows, from having an election where 2 different visions for the city are put forward. And the city says, I vote for this vision, I vote for this direction. And, I just want to make sure, as we evaluate all this, that our residents are being heard in our process. And if we change our process, that they continue to be heard. And, we are a citizen-led city with our current form of government. We are the envy of Georgia and most of the Southeast, and the man standing at the podium gets, a lot of credit for that. You have gone over all these different administrations, and we are standing here now where everybody looks to us and says, how are you guys doing what you're doing? I spoke with Council Member Burnett on the phone, and I appreciate having the conversation. I think it's a good conversation. I think it's healthy. I think it helps us examine ourselves as a city, examine who we are as public servants, examine who we are when we go out and knock on doors and say, this is how we see things, and they buy into that. You know, should we be growing as a city? Should we be slowing down and letting infrastructure catch up? Should the person who gets elected have more say-so in having the proper persons in place to carry out that vision, or do they occupy a seat where there's a paid CEO who's going to be making decisions independent of how our citizens have voted, how our citizens have voiced their opinion about the direction they want to see us go? So I think it's an important decision. It changes process. And I've learned a lot since it's come up because I've been doing a lot of reading. I've been asking a lot of questions, and I appreciate, you know, for the ones who I've had a chance to talk with on council, they're helping me understand the issues better. And so I look forward to working through this and hopefully coming to an informed decision.
Any other comments from council? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
I welcome the discussion, but I want to echo on what Councilmember Hypes was saying. As I look around other cities that had different forms of government than what we've had, they've been less successful, and oftentimes you get a power struggle between the administrator and the mayor, and then the council's all wrapped up into this whole thing. Our city, especially for the last, I'd say 40 years, when infrastructure was being put in by previous councils, and I'm talking 3 and 4 councils back, when the downtown was being planned, when Avalon was being planned, and even parks that were set aside by previous councils, our system of government has worked, and has worked in a tremendous way without creating that friction that other cities, and you don't have to look very far to find out what cities they are and how they work and how they adjust to each other. And because when you get 7 people up here, you get 7 opinions that you have to kind of mesh together. Now, the question for me is, has our system been working? Because, Bob, you've served through how many mayors now?
4 elected and 2 that were
like myself.
In the dark age. For a while.
The dark ages of those 4 months. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. I really am. But and Jim Payne was the other one, right?
Jim Payne, yes.
A good guy. But given that, each person had a different personality, and I'm not sure if it was because you were able to mend and lead based on their various personalities, but you've done I'm not sure if it was because of you or because of our form of government and the way we have it set up currently. But I think just having this conversation, as you brought it up, Ben, is a great thing to have, because I don't want to be stuck in the mud on anything and not able to conform to the future and the way things are evolving. But I also don't want to get into a situation where we create chaos. And that would be the worst thing for Alpharetta that we could do, because I don't want to see our city ever stagnant. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Well, I'll say one, I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem's position and his thoughts, because one, he has sat in this chair, and now that I've sat in both a council member's chair and this chair, it is different in a lot of ways. And so it certainly adds a different perspective to it. I welcome this discussion too, just like I welcome looking into efficiencies as far as hiring staff to do some of the stuff we're paying consultants to. And I think this has been good, because I knew there was differences, but I hadn't spent the time to research what the differences were. And a lot of it, even if we were to make a change, would depend more on what the actual changes to our charter, as Councilman Hypes alluded to, because there's variations And some of them are minor and some of them are major, and they would impact a lot of different things that we could or would do. I'll say that as I looked back at the way this city is operated, and I do give Bob Regas tremendous accolades for the job that he's done. But I think it also comes down to more of, from my perspective, of having the right people on council and the right people in that role, right people as mayor and stuff like that. And that comes down to the city. And I think the people who have voted in this city over the last 40 years, they may have had a misfire once. But man, I think making any changes to the way we do things now, I don't know that there's really any good motivation to do it. There's nothing in the data and the stuff that I've read. If you look around us, having sat in this seat, I think one of the things, and I believe I was talking to Councilwoman Richard about that earlier, is in the big picture, when I read the differences, if you just, what's on paper, basically you're saying that the mayor's no longer the CEO, that the council votes to hire somebody to be the CEO, and then that person runs the city. And so when I look at it at a big picture, what you've done is taken the voters one step further away from accountability. And there may be some advantages to that, but I mean, kind of what Councilman Heights was alluding to, in the races that have taken place for mayor in the city of Alpharetta, there were different viewpoints, and the voters voted for that person. And so for that person to have direct accountability to the people that elected them is different than having somebody that's not as responsive to them. And I think if you really look at it, all of us are accountable. I mean, we're the ones that answer to the voters on everything. And so I think sometimes it would be really challenging for people on this council, myself included, to have somebody making decisions independent of that direct accountability. And when I look at cities around us that have had issues, I mean, I've seen city managers in cities around us just leave because of the chaos that was created from trying to serve 7 masters. I think that direct accountability to the figure that they've elected as mayor isn't a bad thing. I'm skeptical in the big scheme of things. Look, there may be people that prefer one job title or another, and I'm not saying that there's not anybody in the world that wouldn't take that differently. But this city is really, really attractive. And it's a well-run place with a great dedicated staff. And from my perspective, I've interviewed directors from all over the country at times when we weren't even as good a place or as an attractive a place to come to work at. And quite frankly, if there's somebody that's more hung up on the title than the fact that they get to run one of the best cities in the world, I'm okay with them going somewhere else, because I think there's another Bob out there. It's not going to be easy to find anybody that can replace Bob, but there are damn good people out there, and damn good people want to be in a damn good city, and we are. So I'm not concerned about not being able to find somebody to come in here and do a great job in the future. But that's my feedback. If we want to continue down this road, we can continue to explore it and all that stuff. I just think you have to be very careful when things are running really well, not to throw a wrench in the works. But Councilman Binder.
I gave thought, that it is a tough discussion because we are running well, and why is that, and what are we doing for it? And I kind of want to make sure. Go back to, I want to make sure what we're doing matches what our document says we're doing. And I I do think it would be important for all of us to just take a look at it with open eyes on that charter to say, is this currently how we do things? I mean, I think the one that steps out for me is I've been part of three hirings. And man, a lot of times I remember one of the council members who's not here said, Bob, which one do we pick? And that's what it ended up being. We've had conversations, look, what do we do? And look at the city manager. And so I think it's worth a discussion. It's worth the introspect on all of us to say, well, is that a Bob thing or is that the title thing of how we do things? And explore it. I look at how a corporation is with a chairman and CEO. And some corporations have one person being the chairman and CEO, one just be the chairman and the other one be the CEO. So the chair can look at the vision and implementing strategy and policy, and then the CEO can be operating the business. And I do know, I think you've done a fantastic job, Mayor, too, is letting Bob run the operations, not run the operations, but where the hierarchy of staff and they know there's a good chain of command going. I'm saying, so that's a compliment to you. And I've seen and I've heard other times that it hasn't been like that, where it's been tough for council members, where maybe they're on a retreat, one thing was said, and then later on something else was done different, or staff got a different direction. And I've heard all the past stories. I don't know what's true or not because I wasn't there, but so it is kind of a legacy protection of what we should be. So I don't think there are any answers right now, but I would say maybe all of us to look through that charter one more time to see is it doing what we're saying we're doing. And there's always some changes, and maybe it's just small ones and that, but I think it is worth a discussion. So kind of a long-winded way of saying I hope it continues, but there are plenty of reasons why.
Well, since it's a workshop, how do you want it to continue?
Again, as I said, I think it'd be good to see what council says and look at the charter and say if there's anything that we're doing today that's not in the charter, or just exploring more and hearing more about how we want the person to function in the future. I think these conversations are going to be helpful when we all have to get into a room and pick a different person. So that would be two different ways. Is what type of person we want leading us. We're not going to be able to find another Bob. It's like, plenty of head coaches out there. You can't find you can't always find a Hall of Fame coach, which is what we got here. So I think we got to figure out what we want to fit in as a group for the next decade or so, because we wanted to make it a long-term hire. And I think us having these conversations will be beneficial to the hiring process. So it may not be a charter change. But on the charter change, yeah, let's all of us take a look at it with open eyes and see changes in there. I wouldn't. I think it's open for those kind of conversations, but we need to be on the same page going forward when we look for the next person, because trying to recreate, it's too late. We can't clone you, Bob. So we're gonna have to find somebody else. So.
Any other comments from council? Thanks, sir. So that'll wrap up the workshops for tonight. If there's anyone here from the public that would like to comment, I see someone's hand being raised. Now's your opportunity to come forward.
Ruth Ann Tatum, 250 Pebble Trail, Stonegate Manor, the oldest subdivision in the city of Alpharetta. I got a wedding thing. All right, now the only weddings that I have personally seen in the city of Alpharetta have all been at that lovely little park where the Christmas tree is and the gazebo is, and I have seen numerous people get married there. And I was really shocked that it was not at all considered
a wedding place because, no, it's not big. It's just usually small groups. However, something that y'all forgot about was the building that is right next to it, the hotel. And I see opportunities there if you have small, you have maybe small number of people, and you're not gonna, and they can still stand in that little gazebo area, and then they can go right across the street, and they can dress and undress and have a reception and everything. So I want that little gazebo area considered as something that you could work with, and that might actually make some money and might make the hotel happy too. So that is my comment, and I think that's something that needs to be considered. And Rock Mill, no, maybe for Boy Scouts. I can see a Boy Scout thing there, but not a wedding. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here from the public that would like to come forward and speak? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have any reports?
I think sorry.
Councilwoman Richard.
I want to wish a happy birthday to our city attorney. I understand you have one coming up very soon, so happy birthday, Sam.
Happy birthday, Sam.
51 weeks from now.
Oh, was it yesterday? Oh, I'm sorry. I had one Sunday.
Hey, take every birthday you can get, my friend.
Oh, well, I missed Dan's, and you had one as well, right? I know. Last week as well. Yes.
Thanks for my report.
Okay, I see we have reached the end of this meeting. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we are now adjourned.